Hey everyone, before we get into That's What G Said podcast, I want to let you know about one of our sponsors. That's Sarah Candle Company. Their website is sarahcandles.com. They have a really good Mother's Day deal going on right now. If you buy one candle, you get the second candle 33% off. So go right now, check it out. If you're someone that likes candles, it's a great opportunity. You get a couple. These are not just your normal candles that you're going to find anywhere else. They are 100% soy wax. They've eliminated all of those toxins, all of those pollutants, all of those carcinogens because they have soy wax, and because of the wicks that they use, they're actually able to burn 30 to 50% longer than the paraffin wax candles that you see in all of the bigger companies. I know these people personally. I love these candles. I've been using them now for the last few months. They are excellent. Candles.com, CERA candles.com. Go check them out. One of my favorite scents is Fresh Roses. They also have the Del Mar scent. I mean, tons of different scents, sizes for you to choose from. This is a small business, so give them some support right now. Get something nice for one of your mothers, one of your friends, one of a pet mother, an aunt, someone that you know in your family that would enjoy one of these candles. Check them out, sarahcandles.com.
So you want your daily dose of sports and pop culture? Well, I know a guy named G who gives it to you good. That's what G said. From Game of Thrones and Stranger Things to DDTs and chicken wings and banking on a long shot to close. Will the Lakers bounce back? Did USC upset them? Will the Dodgers stop on all who oppose? It's gotta be our It's gotta be our fucking year. That's what G said.
Late Wednesday, May the 6th, 2020. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of That's What G Said podcast. Hope everyone's staying safe out there and all doing well as we start to look around the sports world and really just the world in general, and restrictions are being lifted in many places, and we're starting to see some semblance of sports coming back. It looks like a lot of these racetracks are reopening. We're going to have a ton of horse racing news to talk about today. Also going to recap the last couple episodes of The Last Dance, episodes 5 and 6, and then we'll give you some thoughts on Gulfstream Park for Thursday and for Friday, and then Tampa for Friday, a couple plays over there, and then we recap SummerSlam 1992 with Jason Beem and Danny Kovoloff. So lots of different things to talk about here. Those are my favorite show. That's what this show is about. It's a variety show. We try to talk as much as sports and anything, pop culture, movies, TV shows that we're interested in. It keeps most people interested in the show, and we're able to with no real worry about time, we can, cut out long shows where we are able to bring on guests or talk about each topic, and we don't have to really just buzz right by it. So, love when we get the chance to do that, and we will do that again on this episode. We're going to start with just one of a show that I loved over the last couple years. I watched with Stephanie. We liked Parks and Rec. And if you were someone that's a fan of Parks and Rec, it's not really like a spoiler. They had a little special recently, and it was really cool. It was a special to raise money for Feeding America. And what they did was they were all in character, and it was really fun. If you watch the show, if you like the show, this was very fan-serving. We got a lot of inside jokes. It basically just started with Leslie and Ben, and they were on a kind of like a Zoom call, and they had a phone tree with all of the characters, all of your favorite characters through the year. We really got a chance to see basically everyone. They did a great job, staying, true to the characters that we've known. Lots of fun, lots of laughs. Leslie they were playing off the coronavirus, like reality, but just playing it in their characters. Leslie was checking in with everyone, making sure they were safe and maintaining social distancing, and we got to see everyone on their little setups at home, and just a ton of fun. If you were a fan, go check this out. You'll enjoy it. It makes you smile, and then at the end, everyone gets on together, and they all sing the little Sebastian song. You're 5,000 candles in the wind. Good old Ron set that whole thing up. So Yeah, I mean, we got the Cones of Dunshire reference. We got some funny check-ins with everyone. Nobody wanted to call Gary. Tom's got these crazy ideas for teeny tiny iPads for each finger. Lots of Pawnee talk. They checked in with a lot of different characters from the show. Joan, Dr. Purr, Dr. Jeremy Jam. And then, of course, Jean Ralphio steals the show, like always. He just got run over by a Porsche. He's got tons of money to buy airtime, so he buys a commercial just to give out his phone number because he's bored throughout all of this. He just got kicked off Cameo for doing some of his videos naked. Really fun. Parks and Rec special. We're seeing a lot of different shows kind of doing little specials, doing little things to try to raise money and to try to serve some of the fans out there, because we know this is a time where there's no sports going on. A lot of production has halted on movies, TV shows going forward. So anything that we can do, even if they get a little creative and do things like this on Skype and try to think a little bit outside of the box, or whatever they were using, I thought this was a ton of fun. Let's get into The Last Dance. Let's talk a little NBA, and we'll jump right on over and talk about episodes 5 and 6 from The Last Dance. So we pick up at the 98 All-Star game, and it's really sad because we see Kobe right away. Tons of Kobe, 19 years old. He's on the Western Conference All-Star team, and then all the guys on the Eastern Conference All-Star team were kind of in the locker room with them. They're coached by Larry Bird, and they're kind of razzing Kobe a little bit, right? He's the young guy. He said, that little Laker boy is going to take everyone one-on-one. If I was his teammate, I wouldn't pass him the effing ball. And that was MJ. But you could tell they know he's got that little something, but they're definitely telling him it's not your time quite yet. Not your time quite yet, the little Laker man. Then Magic Johnson comes in to talk to them. We see Magic throughout this episode a lot. Magic in 98, Magic in 92. He just talks a ton of trash to MJ, to Michael Jordan. Magic and MJ, they go back and forth at each other. It's playful for the most part, but you know how that is like when you have that relationship with someone, there's always going to be those times where it escalates and somebody gets pissed off. And Larry has some fun with them, but he doesn't really get into it as much as those two seem to. And then we actually see Kobe. He's on the documentary with recent comments, whenever these were, either in the last year and a half, 2019 probably. So pretty surreal to see a recent Kobe talking about all this and how he had to learn, and it was hard for him because the league was a lot older, and MJ helped him when he asked for him for some help. He helped him with his turnaround, and he said he felt like MJ was a big brother. And he said he hated the people that would ask him if he could beat MJ one-on-one, because he said, I'm not here without Michael Jordan. Like, I'm modeling myself after him. And so he kind of, that was who he held up and wanted to embody, and he did a damn good job. We see Michael Jordan talking trash with Peyton. This is a fun one. There's lots of trash talk going on here. This was supposed to be Michael's last All-Star game. He scores 23 points. He's the All-Star MVP. Kobe has 18. And then we get back into the season, and it's MJ's final game at Madison Square Garden. So he's wearing his original Air Jordans from 1984. And we go back to 1984. We hear from his agency. They wanted to make him an individual in a team sport, more like a golfer or a tennis player. So they go to meet and discuss shoes. They talk to Converse, who's the big company at the day. They had Magic, Larry, and they didn't think Michael was going to be as big of a star as the others or a main focus of theirs. So Michael wanted Adidas, but they weren't very organized. They couldn't make a deal work at the time. And so they looked to Nike, and Nike really wanted MJ. And they're at this point just a track shoe. So Michael didn't really want anything to do with them. So his mom forced him to go to meet with them. They give him a huge pitch. They make a huge offer for his own shoe with this new technology with air soles. They're going to call it the Air Jordan. And their goal was sell $3 million worth by year 4. And in year 1, they sold $126 million. And the shoe, having this shoe, it became like a cultural thing. It was a status thing. it made you like him. You know, they even had later on the If I Could Be Like Mike. Spike Lee produced the commercials. And one thing about this documentary, it bounces back and forth a lot, and some people like it, some don't. I like it. It doesn't bother me at all, because it's you can kind of see what it's doing. It's on a timeline, and it's kind of discussing things past, present, back, forth. So when Michael's, wearing these old shoes in Madison Square Garden in 98, these shoes are from 84, remember? His feet are bleeding at halftime, but he doesn't want to take them off because he's playing well, and this is kind of like a big sort of promotional thing for Nike. He's talking trash to Spike Lee. He's talking smack to Patrick Ewing after the game. There's a lot of smack talk in these couple episodes. And now we're in 92, and they're looking for back-to-back championships. And after that first one, it kind of seemed like this was when the Bulls really figured things out. MJ's in his absolute prime on both ends of the floor, getting people involved all over. They end up facing Portland in the finals. And then you start to get Clyde Drexler was a star for Portland that year. And he was one of the best players in the league also. But again, nobody was really in the conversation with Michael. And so leading up to the series, when they're both going to be playing each other in the finals, obviously you get those comparisons, right? Michael versus Clyde. And MJ took that as a slight. He said he respected Clyde, but he said he was nowhere in his league, and he wanted to go after Clyde. So he tells Magic Johnson the night before that he's going to do that. The Bulls win this series 4-2 for their second straight title. And this is when things start to turn for Michael, because he still feels like he's having fun at this point for the most part. He still feels like he's having a good time. He's enjoying where he is. And that's right when it leads into he wins his second straight title, and then just a few weeks later, or just like a week and a half later, he goes to the Olympics and the Dream Team. And it's the first time that they're having all the professional basketball players team up together. So they have this stacked team, except for Isaiah Thomas, because Michael hates Isaiah. You see things in this documentary that, MJ probably isn't telling us 100% the truth on, some of the things that maybe protect him a little bit. This is probably one of them. I for sure think that he blackballed Isaiah Thomas by not letting him get on the team. He was good enough, but Isaiah was kind of an ass to a lot of people. He got into it with a lot of people. Those Detroit teams got into it with a lot of people. And Michael said that the camaraderie on the team was great. They have fun. They joked, talked about him and Magic and Larry and all those guys. And it would have been a different vibe with Isaiah around. So Magic is in this episode a lot, and he said, with Michael, one thing he saw about him too, they would play cards every night, and he didn't want to just beat you. It wasn't just for fun to pass the time. He wanted to crush you. He wanted to get in your head. He wanted to take all your money. We get footage of this legendary practice game in Monte Carlo where there's a scrimmage between the Dream Team. And Magic's on one team, and Barkley's on Magic's team, and then MJ's on the other team. And Magic's team's dominating early. They said they're up about 8 points or so. And then Magic's really talking trash. Barkley's really talking trash. Magic goes up to Michael. He kind of taps him. He says, "You better turn into Air Jordan or we're going to crush you." And then MJ just turns it on. He flips the switch. He goes on a crazy run. Magic's frustrated. He ends up tossing the ball into the empty stands. They all know at this point, they knew it, but until you're seeing it against the best of the best in a situation like this where Michael was able to just play with them, that they knew he was the man. He was the alpha, the best of the best. So in this 92 Dream Team run, in the 92 Olympics, they have to play the Croatian team, who is, thought about as a big powerhouse team, and a team that has an opportunity to possibly beat the U.S. team. And it's all about Tony Kukoc, who is the star. He was drafted by the Bulls in 1990, and his country was in civil war during that time, so he ends up staying there for a few extra years. He's making a lot more money there. And so there's some bitter feelings from the Bulls. He doesn't come to play with them when he gets drafted second overall, and he is a player that Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan, they've never met. They don't really know anything about him. But all they know about him is that Jerry Krause, is super high on him. He always mentions Kukoc. He's always talking about Kukoc. And they hate hearing this. They have to hear about this from this guy who decided to not come play with them. I don't think they really are comprehending the war stuff and understanding why he doesn't come over. And so when they are matched up with him for the first time in the 92 Olympics, Michael and Scotty, they are like, they're circling him, and they have a plan to shut this guy down. And they tell everyone, you leave Kukoc to us. And Kukoc said he was not ready for it. He was not ready for their level of defense. He was held to 4 points, and Croatia lost by 33. And this was the first time he met those future Bulls teammates, and they did not have great impressions of each other all around. And they end up playing again in the finals. Kukoc actually comes back. He plays much better, but they still end up getting crushed by the USA. There was no team that would have ever been able to keep up with the talent level of that dream team. Although there was an incident at the end. It wasn't rosy. Michael, being a big Nike guy, didn't want to show the Reebok logo, which he had on his jersey, because they were the sponsors of Team USA. So he drapes an American flag over the logo, so that way when they're in the celebration, they can't see. And so obviously this rubs some people the wrong way. But you know what? Michael is so big, he's a global star now after the Olympics. He's now won back-to-back titles. He's now won an Olympic gold medal. He's basically become the face of basketball, the face of the NBA. And now people all over the world got the chance to see Michael. And that, that's when the if I could be like Mike stuff really blows up. But like anything, the bigger the star you are, there's always going to be, nobody's perfect. Everyone's going to have some issues and indiscretion here or there. There's going to be something that makes you human. And there were a couple things that were discussed. First off, politics. Like Michael Jordan did not he didn't really speak and be very opinionated on a whole lot other than basketball, right? That's really all we heard, and that's all he wanted. He didn't want to be a role model. He said that. He said for him, he wasn't thinking about causes. He's not an activist. He's not involved in politics. He just wanted to be the best basketball player in the world. That's what drove him. And so he was not like, Muhammad Ali, or he's not like, even nowadays you hear LeBron, or you hear some players or coaches not afraid to speak out about issues. He was never that way, ever. And he, the famous quote was, Republicans buy Nike too. There was a specific incident with Harvey Gantt, who was running for Senate, and MJ wouldn't endorse him. And he was attempting to become the state's first black senator in North Carolina. And he was running against a long-time, really racist, kind of a bad guy. And MJ wouldn't stand up against him when his mom had asked. And he didn't want to be controversial. And he didn't want to speak about someone or something that he didn't know. Which it's funny. People will say, "Oh yeah, well that's a money thing." But sure, right? He didn't want to piss off the Republicans by going one way. But I try to do that. Like, I'm not really into politics whatsoever. That's why with all this Corona stuff right now, it's like everything's become so political, and I have like zero political ties. I have zero interest in like anything. I've just never been like a political type person. So you don't hear me talk a whole lot about it because it just wouldn't make sense. I'm not very informed, and I don't really care. So I can respect someone who was like, you know what? I'm not going to go represent someone or something that I don't know a whole lot about. Now, if someone was really close to him and he would have, kind of shunned them, maybe that would be a different story. But I don't know. That doesn't bother me a whole heck of a lot. Stand up for something that you believe in. If it's not something you believe in, it's kind of hard to really stand up for it, right? Or if it's not something you know a whole heck of a lot about. His energy was in being the best basketball player ever. But this is something that changed his image with a lot of people. Even Obama talks about it. Others, they looked at him negatively for not being like more active for the black community or using his voice for to speak out on major causes. We jump back now to 1998, and talking about how this final run, like the tickets for the final run, were impossible to get. They're breaking records in the Georgia Dome with over 62,000 people there. They said they could have sold another 15,000 tickets if need be. You got Gary Sinise, Bette Midler, Jerry Rice, Danny DeVito, Sinbad, Dr. Dre, Chris Rock, Drew Barrymore, Wayne Gretzky, John Cusack, Spike Lee, Prince. Jerry Seinfeld goes into the locker room. He's talking to the team back there just like they're all buddies. And that's, how episode 5 ends as we get on to episode 6, where, MJ's now just gone through the Dream Team, the Olympics, and it's into the 93 season. And he's tired now. He's a little worn down. He's not coming off. There's some things out there now. He's the most recognizable face in the world. He has to kind of be confined more than ever before. And there is a book, The Jordan Rules, that comes out. It talks about Jordan fighting with his teammates, how some of them maybe didn't love him, how he threatened players to ice them out, not to pass them the ball. He punched Will Perdue. He wanted to get Krause fired. MJ says it was Horace Grant that gave all of this information to Sam Smith. Horace said it was not him, but people thought so because Sam Smith and him were friends. Some of the other players felt like it had to be more than one person because there were so many different stories from different places that it couldn't have just been one person giving them all this information. And the book is wildly popular. So the writer, Sam Smith, of course, you write a book about a major popular figure like this, he's getting threats. He was attacked for loving, for going after such a beloved player. And this is stuff that's starting to impact MJ off the court. Not necessarily on the court, though. We get a really funny scene in 98 when MJ is betting with the security guys from the United Center, and they're tossing quarters on the carpet, and it's just great. They've got this little game set up, and there's this one goofy guy who is just taking MJ's money, and he's kind of trash-talking him afterwards. It is so great. And we kind of get a little more into Michael's gambling. He plays big money cards in the back of the bus. He would come up front and just take the money of the little guys just so he could have their money in his pocket. He's crazy competitive. And he mentions that later. He says he doesn't have a gambling problem. He has a competition problem. So at the end of 98, they're at 60-18. And the guys are all having a beer in the locker room afterwards. MJ, Scotty, Ron Harper. Scotty tells the people filming to stop filming. Harper doesn't care what they do. And MJ says that 10 years ago they were drinking a case and smoking cigs at halftime. Not necessarily him, I guess, but that's what he says. And he said they were getting the cigarettes from the coaches. But they are having some fun, and they're finishing up their season before their big 98 playoff run. So before they go for that finals run in 98, we go back to 93 where they're going for the three-peat. And their big rival in 93 was the Knicks. The Knicks were kind of like the Pistons. They were really physical. They kind of beat you up a little bit. They made it difficult on you. So it's the Knicks versus the Bulls in the conference finals. The Knicks win Game 1 in New York. MJ was awful in the second half. The Knicks then win Game 2. And after the game, it comes out that Michael Jordan went to Atlantic City the night before Game 2. He went with his dad. Said he was back at 12:30. Some people said they saw him there at 2:30. But when they lost that second game, now, of course, the reporters are starting to bring it up because Michael hadn't really played well in either of the first two games. And this was another story involving gambling. He had already had some history coming up with gambling stories. He had previous gambling ties to Slim Bowler, who was a golf hustler, a real shady kind of character. And Michael actually had to testify on a case and admit that he paid the man for gambling. He had a check written out to him. Initially, Michael said that he gave him a loan, but then when he had to testify, he said no, it was actually for a gambling debt. And at this point, Michael also has a book written about him called Michael and Me, Our Gambling Addiction, written by Richard Esquinas, who writes a book about how Michael was down over $1 million to him in golf and in cards. And Commissioner David Stern actually talked to MJ about it, and he said, I didn't feel that Michael was ever in trouble financially. He makes so much more money than everyone else. He's betting a lot more money, but to him, that's not nearly as much as it would be to anyone else, right? So This is where Michael says he has a competition problem, not a gambling problem. And he started to get fed up with the media at this point. He's shutting them out, and his dad's actually talking to the media for him in some places. So after that whole Atlantic City debacle, game 2, they lose. All the media's pissed. They're saying that Jordan doesn't care anymore and that he doesn't want to win anymore. He comes back. He dominates. They tie it up 2-2. Then they win Game 5 by 1, and they win Game 6, 4 straight. The team took it personally. They played really hard for MJ, and now they are on to the finals again for a third straight year in 93. In 98, getting ready to go to the playoffs, trying to get to the finals for another third straight year, and this time in 98, we see MJ and Harper and Scotty, they're golfing, and they're kind of having fun, they're relaxing, and Michael says, Phil knows that we need to get it right, get mentally right before the big run. Towards the end of this episode 6, we get the 93 finals now. So it's the Bulls, they got past the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals. Now they're in the finals. They're playing against Barkley and the Suns. Barkley was the MVP this year. And that kind of bothered MJ a little bit. He felt a little slighted. He wanted to be the MVP every year. He wants to win everything. But before Game 1, MJ does an interview with Ahmad Rashad. It's weird, though, because he does it with sunglasses on. And he talks about his gambling not being a problem. He actually even mentions that he could leave the NBA soon. He's kind of fed up with everything. Another little chip on Michael's shoulder. He just created all these things to motivate him. Dan Marley was someone that Jerry Krause was really high on. So Michael wanted to go right at Dan Marley. Krause thought he was a really good defensive player. MJ attacks him. And the Bulls win the first two games of the series in Phoenix. Barkley actually said he played as well as he could have possibly played, and they lost in Game 2. And he said that was the first time he felt like he maybe wasn't the best player in the world. So Game 3, the Suns actually win in Chicago. It's triple overtime. Game 4, Michael scores 55. They're now up 3-1. And in Game 5, the Bulls fans are all celebrating. Everyone's kind of acting like this series is over, and that really pissed off the Suns, and that motivated them. So they end up winning that game. So now it's Game 6. The Bulls are having to go back to Phoenix. They're actually down 4 with 40 seconds left. Michael hits a layup, and then Paxson nails a 3 to win it at the buzzer. And this third win in 93, this was more like of a relief. You didn't see the happy MJ. He was obviously happy to win, but he wasn't showing that emotion as much as he was showing the relief of everything he went through all year, the gambling stuff, the ups, the downs, the book coming out, all the negative publicity about him. And then we get the Bulls finishing the 98 season tied for their best record. So tied for best record in the league. They have a first-round matchup against the New Jersey Nets. And MJ saying he's not sure if he's going to miss it when he leaves. He's tired. So next up, we'll end up getting the start of the run through the 98 playoffs, and then I'm sure we'll go back now to Michael leaving basketball to go to play baseball, and then his return in the next few episodes. Still 4 episodes left, so 2 each of the next 2 weeks. I'm really enjoying this. It's entertaining. We got to take it with a grain of salt, right? Like, not everything that is said in here is gospel. When somebody talks, they probably have memories that might be a little slighted one way or the other, or their discussions might be something that kind of makes them come off a little bit better. But it's fun to hear these stories. It's fun to hear Michael react as someone who hasn't been the most vocal all the time. Let's get on over to horse racing. There is a lot to talk about in horse racing right now. Lots of major news. How about Oaklawn Park, who finished up their meet on Saturday with the 2 Arkansas Derby races? They handled $41 million. Their previous high was $19 million, which was April the 18th, a few weeks ago. Prior to that, their previous high was $16.9 million, which was April 11th. And their previous high before this year was in 2019, the Rebel, when they had $16.2 million. They were up to $41 million in handle. That is unbelievable. And they had a massive day. I mean, we saw, just quickly through some of the results that we saw on Saturday from last week. A really good race in the 5th race where we had Endorsed, who was coming out of the big cap. He ends up winning and defeating Bankit. Pirate Punch was in that race. Long Range Toddy, Rated R Superstar. Like, that was a legitimately good group of horses in an allowance race, and you'll see a bunch of those horses show up in stakes races next time. Hunt the Front won in a really nice maiden race, defeated Friars Road, who had a little bit of traffic trouble and maybe not the greatest of trips. So Hunt the Front, probably one that will jump into a 3-year-old stakes race somewhere pretty soon. In the 7th race, we saw 2 really nice fillies, Gamine and Speech. There was a weird buyer speed figure conspiracy with them, but these top 2 are legitimate. They're very, very good. Keep an eye on those 2 moving forward. A horse named Moretti got back into the winner's circle in the 8th. I was super high on him last year, and he just kind of has had some issues, and maybe he's the kind of horse who just needed to get a little bit older, grow up. He doesn't have a whole lot of like early speed. He's kind of like a little grindy, but he ran really well in here, and he got himself back into the winner's circle. Then there was a weird race in the 9th where you have a horse like Dumpf who shows massive improvement first off the claim for the leading barn at the meet. He was a 57-1 winner, and if you follow Craig Milkowski, he was tweeting recently about how it was a pretty crazy jump up for a horse like that, and you got to kind of scratch your head sometimes when you see horses improving that much. It sometimes is one of those, long shots win all the time. This one just seemed a little weird. In race number 10, just a loaded card. Rushy wins this one. Candy Tycoon was second. Background was one of my plays. And you know what? Background ran really well. He finished third. Absolutely no excuses for Background that day on Saturday. He just probably not as good as the top 2. Then we got into Arkansas Derby number 1, and we saw Charlatan. And when Shooter Shoot scratched in here, it just looked like there was no other speed to push Charlatan early on. Charlatan draws the rail. He was very good. He was very impressive. He wins. He earns a buyer speed figure of 96. And he beat Basin. And Basin was really good. He was the only horse. He broke well, and he tried his best to press Charlatan to make a little bit of a race out of it. But it was just too easy for Charlatan up front. He was flying through fractions. But, I'm more of a watch the race than a time person in general. And what I mean by that is sometimes it's easier to go a little faster when there's nobody chasing you, right? You can just kind of open up and get real comfortable. When there's others pressing you, you can even be going slower and the race is more difficult because you're dealing with all that pressure. So Basin ran awesome for second. Governor Morris was third. Winning Impression was fourth. The New Door was fifth in here. But Charlatan, undefeated, really untested so far. And I mean, he has to be considered on that very, very top tier right now with the 3 Baffert horses and Tis the Law. Those look like the horses that are the top tier right now. And again, a lot's going to change because we're not going to be having a Kentucky Derby, it looks like, until September. But racetracks will be opening back up, and we're going to get to a lot of that news in just a second. The Oaklawn Handicap was in race number 12 by my standards. So impressive. He sat nicely from the outside. He just breaks so well, and then you can place him anywhere. He's that kind of handy horse who always makes his own trip. Warriors Charge set the pace, ran well. Mr. Freeze also showed up with a good effort. And then Tacitus, just kind of late on the scene. He actually did run pretty well in here, too. This was a strong group. Improbable scratched before the race, so we didn't get to see Improbable, where he would have taken a lot of money and would have been another very live contender in that one. And then we got the second Arkansas Derby, and Nadal is my favorite right now, the 3-year-olds. He proved that he can sit off the pace now if he has to, and he didn't sit far, but Wells Bayou just flies from the outside. And Nadal breaks like a step slow, but then he moves nicely right up in. He presses him. He goes, he just responded to all everything when he was asked. He responded to go after him. He responded to sitting. He opened up, and then late in the stretch, when it looked like he was going to get challenged from King Guillermo and Finnick the Fierce, he just had another gear that he kicks onto. He really feels like he's just kind of playing around with them, out there. And to me, he seems a little more seasoned and a little more versatile than Charlatan. And he actually got the better, speed figure than Charlatan in this race from a buyer standpoint. I'm not massive on the buyer, I'm not. I like to use the speed figures to complement the handicapping instead of just using a speed figure as like an end-all be-all. Farmington Road was fourth in here. Storm the Court, Silver Prospector. They'll probably have to maybe figure things out and rethink things. I personally think Silver's probably both of them. I think Silver Prospector would be a really good miler. He just never seemed to me like, even when he would run well, he'd kind of hit the front and then idle a little bit and stop. I don't know how far he wanted to go. And it kind of feels that way with Storm the Court now, too. Maybe he's best if you cut him back to a mile or 7 furlongs. So we'll see what the plans will be for them moving forward. Next week, we're going to do a full preview of the current point standings. We'll go through like maybe the top 30 or 43-year-olds. We'll talk about what some of their plans are. I was going to do it this week, but since a lot of these racetracks are just opening back up, they're starting to put their stake schedules out there now, and they're starting to figure out where some of these Kentucky Derby points races and the next round of preps are going to be. So I think if we wait a few more days, we'll be able to get an idea of, better plans for a lot of these horses who these trainers are just kind of sitting like we are. They're waiting to get information right now. They don't know anything. So once these tracks start to open back up, which looks like a few of them on the 14th or 15th of May, then we'll really get a good idea of, okay, when are these big stakes races coming? Or we kind of know when they're coming. We just don't really know who's going to be going to them quite yet. At Oaklawn, the meet ended with Robertino Diodoro as your winning trainer. Asmussen was second in wins. Brad Cox was third. Ron Moquette was fourth. And John Sadler was fifth. And Diodoro hit at 22%. John Sadler had a really good meeting. He hit at 23%. Baffert won with 9 of his 15 starters. He won at 60%. Hollendorfer had 12 winners at the meeting also. He had a decent meet. On the jockey side there at Oaklawn, I said it to the sounds of the guitar, baby, played by Ricardo Santana Jr. He was your leading jock with 60 wins. Martin Garcia was second with 55. Joe Talamo was third with 53. David Cohen was fourth with 44. Orlando Mojica had 37 wins. Walter De La Cruz had 33. Tyler Bays had 29. Fernando De La Cruz had 22. And Stuart Elliott had 20. And Martin Garcia riding at 19% right there with Ricardo Santana Jr. They both had really good meets. Talamo had a great meet. Good meet for Bays. You saw a lot of these connections that we became familiar with from Southern California when they weren't racing out here, or even because the way that the fields and the landscape had changed the last couple of years. Not a lot of races, not a lot of opportunities. Good to see Garcia and Talamo and Bays doing well. Rosario, he won 17 races in his 45 mounts. He won at 38%. And what's funny is, it still felt like there were a lot. There were some that he probably left on the track, right? Because that's what happens when you ride so many live horses. It feels like some days you have 3 or 4 bad rides and you end up winning 3 or 4 races anyways. So, Joel with a monster Oaklawn meeting. Florence Roux won 5 out of his 27, and Gabe Saez won a couple there. He was only there for 4 races, but he did pick up a couple wins. Let's talk a little bit more about the news in racing, and then we'll get into some handicapping for Thursday and for Friday. So, the per-race handle in April, I mean, this is going to be obvious, right, rose 164%. U.S. racetracks only held 746 races, which was down 71% from last year because, all these tracks are closed from the virus. But the race per race handle at the few tracks that were open was up 164%. So total handle it dropped 25.4% in April compared to April last year, but there were 24 tracks open, including Santa Anita, Keeneland, Belmont, which did not race at all during the month, and the total number of April races dropped from 2,612 to 746, and the purses were down. They were down to 79%. The average handle per race was up a ton. The average field size also jumps a ton, up to over 9 horses per race. So for the whole year, total handle has declined 6.9%, and the number of races have declined 25.7%. some news came out a little earlier that said it looks like the Preakness is going to be run October 3rd. Then that news has been rebutted and said there still could be a couple other dates, so they're still looking, but keep that date in your mind. It might be October 3rd. It might be earlier as a date. They try to schedule the Preakness. Santa Anita. They need approvals to reopen on May 15th, but they put out a condition book. They're hoping to run behind closed doors once the safer at home mandate ends, or they become declared more of an essential business. Racing would continue Friday, Saturday, Sunday, along with Memorial Day Monday, and there would be 8 stakes races coming up in this first condition book that we see. You'd have the Echo Eddie, the Evening Jewel on May the 16th, May the 17th, the Desert Stormer. You got the Daytona Stakes, the Charlie Whittingham, the Monrovia, the Shoemaker Mile, and the Gamely. And then it looks like the June 6th date would be the day for the Santa Anita Derby to be rescheduled, and it will be a Kentucky Derby qualifying race, most likely a 100 points to the winner, 40 to second, 20 to third, 10 to fourth. And a win in your in qualifier for the Derby, which basically it would be a win in your in qualifier. So that June 6th day would be like the big day where you'd probably get the Santa Anita Derby, the Gold Cup, the Santa Anita Oaks. Some of that information from Ron Flatter that we saw on Twitter. He was, I think, one of the first that was posting it. So the racetrack, upon reopening, has devised several further social distancing measures, and has also proposed even having its jockeys live in housing at the track. So on Wednesday, they're actually going to do a run-through and practice their new protocols. Horses brought into the receiving barn will be saddled and led to the track. They will be led on a path to the walking ring, transferring to grooms. Jockeys will mount in the walking ring. No saddling enclosure. No winner's circle ceremonies. So they're making the adjustments at Santa Anita. They want to get rocking and rolling very soon. They just need to get the okay and hope that they're ready to start back up on May the 15th. Churchill Downs has released its first condition book of races for 2020. Opening day will be Saturday, May the 16th. They're going to run Thursday through Sunday. Holiday Monday on Memorial Day, also May the 25th. Closing day will be June the 27th. It's a 26-day spring meeting. 125 races will be run, 125 races are offered in the first condition book, which is from May 16th to June the 5th. Stake schedule, 16 stakes totaling $2.25 million, and they begin on Saturday with Saturday, May the 23rd, with the Matt Wynn Grade 3, and it's going to be getting some Kentucky Derby points. 10 points to the winner, 4 to second, 2 to third, and 1 for the fourth place finisher. So that Saturday, May 23rd, will be the first big stakes race. You'll have the Blame Stakes, the Shawnee, you'll have the War Chant, and the Tep-In also. So these meets now are going to be condensed, and they're going to be really, really stacked. May 30th, you'll get the Old Forester, Mint Julep, you'll get the Winning Colors. Saturday, June 6th at Churchill, you'll get the Aristides, and you'll get the Dogwood. On June the 13th, you'll get the Louisville. On June the 20th, you'll get the Wisedan and the Audubon, and then on Saturday, June the 27th, that's the big day where you get the Stephen Foster, the Fleur de Lis, the Regret, and the Bashford Manor. And their stable areas have opened in kind of a phased way. They let the horses from Fairgrounds come in May 11th, 12th, 13th. Then they get the horses from Gulfstream Park and from Tampa horses, Florida-based horses May 14th, 15th, 16th. Then they let the Oaklawn Park horses come in 17, 18, 19. And then all others on May the 20th. So they're bringing them in little by little, and Churchill Downs should be up and running in just a few weeks. The Stephen Foster and the Fleur de Lis are part of the Breeders' Cup Win and You're In. 10 graded stakes races. Of those 16, anything else from Churchill? No, not that. Churchill, they'll be up up soon. Monmouth Park, they want to get the ball rolling. Monmouth Park in New Jersey, they will run 35 stakes races after the delayed meet. They're going to reopen on July 3rd. The Haskell scheduled for July the 18th, plus the United Nations, so they will have 2 Grade 1s on that card, as well as the Monmouth Cup, the Molly Pictor, and the Matchmaker Stakes. Again, another, meet that's going to be kind of crunched down. They will, this year, the mile and an eighth Haskell will be contested as a stakes race. Nominations closing on June the 26th. They have developed plans to ensure safety of the staff, horsemen, and fans. A quote that said the plans will be fluid and continuously be monitored and updated as necessary. Our protocols will address racing with or without fans and will be in effect as soon as horses return to Oceanport. All plans are subject to the governor's approval and will continue to take our cues from his office. Governor Murphy has shown exceptional leadership through this crisis. This was a quote from Dennis Drazen. So Monmouth season, 37 live racing days, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. They're going to be running from July 3rd through September the 27th. They'll have a late post time on Friday of 5 p.m. Eastern Time. All other days, 12:50 p.m. Eastern Time. Haskell will be at noon. And their stable area will be set to open on June the 1st. They have that little incentive for trainers stabled on the grounds. All trainers guaranteed $300 per starter, with owners assured $500 per runner. So you can check out that full stakes schedule there with a lot of the familiar stakes there. As mentioned, the big day would be July the 18th with all those stakes, and then you'll get the Monmouth Oaks in August. You'll get the Eatontown in August, the Phillip Island later there, the Red Bank too into September. So you'll see a lot of those familiar stakes. Charlestown and Mountaineer, they're getting set to run again. April 30 announcement said they would allow the resumption of horse racing without spectators at Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races. They will attempt to resume live racing on May the 14th. Mountaineer Park plans to begin racing on May the 31st. In addition to conducting races without spectators, Charlestown will continue its live racing under a set of protocols developed to protect the health and safety of those present. So until further notice, Charlestown's receiving barn is closed. They are only allowing those stabled in West Virginia and West Virginia breds at the moment. They are going to have protocols for trainers that don't have stalls at Charlestown, and they'll be specifically, dealing with each of those incidents. Temperature checks for people entering the grounds, required protective coverings for individuals' mouth and noses, and restrictions of access only to essential personnel, some of the things that they're working on. And what's unfortunate is while all this is happening, New York is just kind of sitting around and waiting because there's nothing they can do. New York's in a bad spot right now. They have completed a plan for racing without fans. They're hoping it will be receiving approval before the end of the month, but they don't know. Things have not been great in New York, and they're hoping May 22nd, May 29th, maybe they get approval, and it could be, a week or so after that. But we're getting, a ton of these tracks that have either gotten the green light or are really close to getting the green light to open back up with the protocols, with no fans, obviously. Horses training at Belmont, but they need, to be able to have more horses shipping in. Because right now the only horses that can ship in are unraced 2-year-olds or horses in the midst of a layoff. So they need the horses from Florida, from all over the place to come in. And then obviously, they're waiting. They don't know what to do with their stake schedule, because the Belmont schedule is for June 6th. But, we're into May right now. That doesn't seem very likely. And they're going to have to kind of figure out what they're going to do, when they're going to move it. Are they going to move it to the later part of the meet? How they're going to do it? So, unfortunately, when some of the other places and the other tracks are moving forward, New York and Belmont, they're kind of just waiting in the wings a little bit. And then the voters have actually put Nadal up as the top 3-year-old after the Arkansas Derby win this weekend. He currently number 1 in the voting over Tiz the Law, Charlatan's 3rd, Authentic is 4th, King Guillermo's 5th, Honor AP 6th, Sol Volante 7, Ete Indian 8, Maxfield is 9, and Basin is 10. We're going to talk about Maxfield in just a second. And we also got By My Standards moving to number 3 on the older horse. He's only behind Midnight Bisou and Mucho Gusto. He's right ahead of Zulu Alpha, CC, Tom's D Tot, Maximum Security, Whitmore, Mr. Freeze, and Code of Honor. Maxfield, Grade 1 winner. He looks like he's going to be pointing to that May 23rd Matt Wynn Stakes and maybe get him some Kentucky Derby points. Remember, Maxfield, he was 2 for 2 last year. He broke his maiden, and then he won the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland, and he was a super live contender. A lot of people were really high on him heading into the Breeders' Cup, and then unfortunately, he had a little bit of a hiccup. He had a small injury. He was scratched from the Breeders' Cup after he had some discomfort a few days before the race, and so we haven't seen him since. And now this is a good spot for him. Walsh says it's at home there at Churchill, and looks like Jose Ortiz will be aboard for the ride. This race has been changed now, remember, because it was generally run later after the Derby, but now, with there having been no Derby, this is a good opportunity to get another spot for some 3-year-olds to run, stretch their legs, stay in good shape, and maybe pick up a couple extra points along the way. So, a couple other things to note. The Los Alamitos Derby, Grade 3, mile and an eighth on July the 4th. It is now a $150,000 race, and it will be a Kentucky Derby points race. They just don't know how much yet. But they raised the purse a little bit to attract the attention of the committee and be able to get this as one of these races now to circle and give them some points. Golden Gate, another racetrack that is ready to rock. They are looking to open back up May the 14th through June the 14th, 4 days per week. The Grade 3 San Francisco Mile on June the 14th. And they've had some of their stakes races that have been postponed until the later meeting this year. And just some quick Hall of Fame news. Trainer Mark Casse, who, this is from Jay Privman, DRF article. He said Trainer Mark Casse, major victories include Triple Crown races in the U.S. and Canada, as well as the Breeders' Cup and Royal Ascot. And Wise Dan were announced on Wednesday as new Hall of Famers in this year's inductees. 5 others include Daryl McCargue, 1870s racehorse Tom Bowling, and Alice Headley Chandler, and Keen Dangerfield Jr., and George Widener Jr. So those are the Hall of Famers this year. Congratulations to those. Those that did not make the Hall of Fame this year, that didn't make the vote, they were Casse and Wise Dan were 2 of the 11 finalists on that ballot. They got at least 50% of the support. And the 9 who failed to make the cut: Blind Luck, Game On Dude, Auber de Grace, Kona Gold, Rags to Riches, and then trainers Christophe Clement, Doug O'Neill, David Whiteley, and then jockey Corey Nakatani. So, Hall of Fame information there. Let's get into some specifics on the races, right? And let's get into Gulfstream Park. Let's go to Friday. Or let's start with... One of the sponsors of That's What G Said podcast is Cindy Carava, full-service realtor, and I am here over in Glendora at Coldwell Banker with Cindy Carava. Cindy, how was 2019 for you? Tell us a little bit about what kind of stuff you were working on.
Hi, Gino. Thanks for having me. 2019 was just really great. I had a great year selling homes all the way from Altadena, Arcadia, Monrovia, out to Upland and Ontario just recently. The market has been really good. We're looking forward to 2020 with an increase in home prices about 5.8% this year, opposed to last year where it was a little softer. We saw more like homes averaging about 3.5% in increase in value. It's also looking great for buyers. The interest rates right now are going to be staying under 4%. So if you've been on the fence about thinking about buying a home, now is the time to do so, with interest rates still staying low.
And you offer more services than just the buying, selling, and leasing homes. Tell us about some of the other services that you offer and what a full-service realtor really is.
So you're right, Gino. Besides me being a full-service realtor of finding properties for my clients to buy or selling their homes or finding rentals for them, I also have a plethora of resources like handyman, contractors, electricians, plumbers. I even, if like I said, if you're thinking about getting a home loan, I actually work with 2 great lenders that I can recommend to anybody.
And you're all over the internet, social media, websites. Let us know some of the places where we can find you. I know I've seen some reviews on Yelp and on Zillow. Everyone always has positive things to say. Everybody hears me raving about you all the time. But where can everyone else find out information about you or contact?
Thank you, Gino. Yeah, I am on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. And you can contact me on my website, which is www.cindykarava.com, or my email, which is cindyc.realtor@gmail.com, or feel free to call or text me on my cell phone, which is 626-394-6400.
Cindy is awesome. She's one of the kindest and most genuine people I've ever met. I promise you, you will enjoy every minute you interact with her. So thank you very much, Cindy. Appreciate all of your support from That's What G Said podcast.
Thank you, Gino. Have a great day, everyone.
Thursday, May the 7th, April. Yeah, April's gone by. Thursday, May the 7th at Gulfstream Park. Let's get to a couple plays there. Race number 1, 5 furlongs on the turf. I'm going to go to the 7, Business in Dubai. Now, she's coming out of a couple races where she was going longer on the grass. She showed a little speed in those starts. But I actually liked the February 27th race when she was sprinting, going 5 furlongs. She got stuck in a really bad spot down on the inside, nowhere to go. Got shuffled, took up, came on again. When you look at her, she might be one of the most quick naturally in this field. There just isn't a ton of speed. There's a couple others who have some kind of pressing type speed, and it wouldn't be shocked to see, one of a few of these show a little speed. But if she's able to get the lead or sit very close on the cutback with an aggressive jockey and a big jock upgrade with Saez jumping aboard, I think she's got a major, major shot in here. If she's close early, she's going to be really tough on the cutback. There's just not a lot of speed for a 5 furlong turf sprint race like this. Let's give the 7 Business in Dubai top billing. We'll make a win wager if we can get anything around 7-2. Make sure to use that one in your exotics. In race number 2, I thought the 8 was a little bit interesting. Mainly, this is just an experience edge for a barn who's really good second out, and this filly gets off the rail. Drawing the rail first time out, not easy. Now you get the experience edge. You move from the inside to the outside. You have one other horse in this field who has raced before, and this is a barn who is really, really good with 2-year-olds and really good with horses that are making their second start. I like Awesome View in here. If you're playing that early pick 5, make sure to throw Awesome View on to your ticket. Maybe make a win wager if you can get around like 5-1 or so. Let's get to race number 4. A couple horses to take a look at in here. The 4 Formula. She had a brutal start in her debut, and that was against maiden 50s going long on the grass. These are maiden 16s going long on the grass. She was slow. She was bumped on both sides. She was 15-plus lengths off. She actually showed some ability just getting back in the race and only losing by, 6 lengths or so. Now you get the drop. You get a major jock upgrade with Joelle jumping aboard. I think Formula should come rolling today, and she might even have more speed than we know because she just had that awful, awful start. Garner State Park, the 5, had some legitimate trouble too. She had a slow start in her April 17th race. She was 4 wide. She was bumped into the turn. She was 4 wide into the turn, and she was at the rear. Then she takes up. Then she settles in about 7th or 8th. She's maybe like 7 lengths off or so. She's in the 2 path, and she moves in between horses. Then she angles out 4 wide at the top of the lane. She gets the lead. She opens up 2, but she couldn't straighten out late. She was a clear-cut second to a 40-1 long shot who blew up the tote board. For me, any of the early exotics, use the 4 and the 5 in that 4th race. And, whichever of these, if you get like a much better price on one or the other, then that's how I would play them. But I'd probably play the 2 of them in the exotics and key the 2 of them in a lot of the rolling exotics. In the 5th race, I'm going to use the 1 Indian Counselor on top. Put a line right through the dirt isn't really what this one wants. So let's focus on his turf races. 2 starts back on March the 25th. He sat close early, and this was going 1.5 miles. And he waited behind a runoff horse. He was in the 2 path. He was about 7 lengths off. He was in second and third, and then he kind of got caught in between horses. He shoots through, but he just moved a little bit too early, and he probably didn't want to go 1.5 miles. Not many horses nowadays, really want to go that far. I think Indian Counselor on the cutback should be really, really tough in here. So let's make sure to use this one in all of your exotics. The 2 Digital Footprint. Maker is so good with, horses coming into their barn for the first time, first off the claim, or new acquisitions. And in particular, when you have a horse like this, on the grass going long. So the 2 is hard to leave out underneath and in exotics. And then the 4, Blameless. I don't know if there's that much speed in here. Depends on what the plans with the 2 Digital Footprint are. I wouldn't be shocked to see Blameless sitting pretty close in here in a race that doesn't look to have a ton of other speed. So let's use the 1 with Indian Counselor, with the 2 Digital Footprint, with the 4 Blameless in some of those other exotics. Okay, let's skip to race number 9 now at Gulfstream Park for our next play. And it's going to be the 4 Champagne Horizon, who, I just remember making the note when this one ran off and got loose in the post parade and then just didn't fire. And she's better than that. We've seen her. If she just runs back to her form prior to that, she's right on the wire here. The 3 Bean Counter is going to be, the one they have to beat. I don't know if she loves winning races, though. And then the 2 Lido Key, interesting for McPeak, coming in off a pretty nice put-it-all-together kind of win, and now in the McPeak barn for the first time. So I would use the 4-3-2 in race number 9 at Gulfstream Park. And then I think my best play of the day at Gulfstream actually is going to come in the 11th race. That's going to be with the 9, Coco Star. So he's raced 3 times. All of them were against maiden special weight company, so all of his races have been against tougher. In his debut, it's at Turfway Park. It's going long on the synthetic. So he doesn't like the synthetic. That's fine. You can put a line right through it. And he lost to a horse named Invader, who came back to win the John Battaglia and was second in the Grade 3 Jeff Ruby. Coco Star then comes back on January the 18th, finishes 7th, but it's not a bad effort that day. Win finishing 7th on that January 18th race, the winner shakes some action, came back to win next out, and then was 6th in the Louisiana Derby and really didn't run that poorly. Auburn Hills came back to win a maiden special weight next out. The 4th place finisher, Spanish Kingdom, won his maiden special weight 2 starts later, that March 21st race, when defeating Coco Star. The 9th place finisher, Urbanite, came back to win a maiden 32 starts later. Even the 13th place finisher, Coach Bahe, won a maiden special weight next out, and actually came back and was 5th in the Rebel and ran pretty well. That was a strong race on the 18th. So we're looking at a horse who's coming out of much, much better races. And last time out behind Spanish Kingdom, who I think is just a little bit better at the maiden special weight level. Now you're going to go second off a short little break. And Coco Star had some legitimate trouble last time out. He broke in, he bumped, he was squeezed out of the spot that he wanted. So he has to settle inside 6th, 7th, in about 7 lengths off or so. He's behind horses, he's waiting, he gets an opening, he moves in between, he angles out and around, and he actually gets up to 3rd in the stretch before tiring. So a little bit of early trouble, race that's better than it looks on paper. Now you're going to drop in class. We're going to go with Coco Star, the number 9, top selection there. And if we can get, 3-1 or so on Coco Star, we'll also use in some exotics with the 2 by 2. So the plays for Gulfstream Park on Thursday, May the 7th, in race number 1, Business in Dubai. The value line there is about 7-2. In race number 2, the 8, Awesome View. What we're hoping for there is around 5-1. 4th race, the number 4, Formula, use with the number 5, Garner State Park as 2 in some of your exotics. If we can get 7-2 on either of them, would be fair. Indian Counselor feels like the same, around 7-2 in race number 5. That's the 1 Indian Counselor, used along with the Digital Footprint, the 2, and the 4 Blameless. In the 9th race, the number 4 Champagne Horizon, with the 3 Bean Counter with the 2 Lido Key. And in the 11th, the number 9 Coco Star with the Deuce, 2 by 2. That's Thursday, Gulfstream Park. Let's get over to Friday at Tampa. Tampa, Friday, May the 8th. Let's jump to race number 2 for the first play. And it's going to be the number 6 in here. That is, He's Smoking Now. So you look at this race, it's actually a really strong race. There's some quality in here, but I think this is the right time to try to catch a price. A couple of these horses haven't raced in a while. They might need a layoff. The 3 horses to the inside haven't raced since October or November. And then the way it shapes up on paper, it looks like there's going to be a lot of speed in here. I think the 6, He's Smoking Now, is in a great spot. Let's go through his career. His debut, he was one of 2 next out winners, right? He didn't run well, but then he comes back in career start number 2 and he wins at Presque Isle. Comes back on December the 21st, he wins again. So they step him up. He takes a shot against Stakes Company. He's on paper, he's overmatched. He finishes 4th that day, but he runs into a horse named Liam's Lucky Charm, who was a multiple stakes winner, and Liam's Lucky Charm was only 5-1 in the Risen Star. On January the 31st, he takes a shot going long on the grass. He loses to a horse named Keepsake Kitten, who had won 3 of 4, and he actually didn't run bad. He had a little bit of trouble that day. He was fine going long on the grass. They cut back to a dirt sprint. He stumbles badly right at the start. He goes right down to his nose. He recovers. He moves up the rail into a really tight spot. He gets a great opening. He moves through. He takes the lead. He opens up. He wins easily. He's drawn well. He should get a great trip from off the pace in here. Is he as good as some of the other horses to his inside? Probably not, but he might be able to catch them right now when they haven't raced in a while. For him, it's only been a few months. I don't mind that he's a little bit fresh with his running style either. He's not a horse that's probably going to have to work hard all throughout. He's going to be taking back, hoping they go quick early, and making that one late run. Let's go to the 6. He's Smoking Now, if we can get anything around 7-2. In race number 3, let's look at the 9, Highly Explosive. They're going to be going long on the grass in here. Highly Explosive has raced twice. In her debut, she was against Maiden Special Weight sprinting on the dirt. Didn't run well. Career start number 2, she dropped in for Maiden 32, and they wanted to get this race. She wanted to go on the grass, but the race was taken off the turf. So she runs, and she actually broke pretty well. She sat a close-up third. She was in between horses. She was within a couple lengths. She just didn't seem like she loved the surface, so she ends up backing up. Now they're finally going to get on turf. Her dam won on the turf. Both the siblings won. One of them won on the turf. You're going to drop in class again. I think she's a little bit sneaky because her races haven't looked good, but this is what she wants to do. Let's use the 9, Highly Explosive, in all of our exotics. We'll make a win wager if we can get around like 8-1 or so. Let's skip to race number 5 for the next play at Tampa for Friday, May the 8th. And let's go to the 3, Redeem My Heart. She tried the grass for the first time in her last start, and it was a slow start. She was outrun. She was like 10 plus off. And she was dead last. She was probably 6 lengths behind the second to last horse. She closed really well. She angles to the middle of the racetrack. She's literally in like the 8-9 path down the center of the track, way closer to the outer rail than the inner rail. And that was in February, and that was in a good race at Fairgrounds. Now she's going to go second time turf. Spieth jumps back aboard. He knows this filly well. And she doesn't have to be so far back in here, right? Lady Nina has pace. O'Keefe has pace. Regal Chant has pace. Dealer's Girl has pace. Puntsville has pace. No Mercy Percy probably won't be too far out of it. She can close a little bit in here, but her form is kind of questionable. I think it points to Redeem My Heart getting a great trip from up the speed, but she just doesn't have to be 12 lengths out of it. She can sit closer. She showed speed, and we're not talking about like legitimate sprint speed, but she can be closer. Redeem My Heart, the number 3. If we can get 7-2, we'll make a win wager on Redeem My Heart. Let's go to race number 7, and let's go to the 3. Channel Ed's Long Shot. He just doesn't like the dirt. Toss his debut. Again, this is what I like to do. We go race by race. That's where you're able to look at horses and go, you know what? They have a reason why they didn't run that well in that spot, and maybe their form is better than it looks. Debut, doesn't run well sprinting on the dirt. Stretches out in career start number 2, but that's a maiden 50 on the turf. That's probably a group that's a little bit too tough because he actually hooks a horse named Monforte who has come back and beat him again, and Monforte has won 5 of his last 6. So those 2 races against Monforte, you're looking at a horse who's just better than Channeled Ed's long shot. So the September 6th race, I really like when he won that day in the Maiden 25. That kind of a race would fit really well in here. And if he stepped up and improved a little bit as a 3-year-old, he's going to go second start off the long layoff. The blinkers come off. He goes back to the turf. He gets a class drop. Makes a lot of sense in here. This is not a strong race. There are no monsters. The 3, big shot at 7-2. Let's go to the 9th race at Tampa for the final play on Friday at Tampa, and it is the number 2 U.S. Delta Force. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets bet down a little bit. It's a shug horse, and all of his horses seem to fire here. Morales is back, and he's riding, but he may be a horse you can single in some of your exotics late. If he's over 9-5, I think that's actually value on him. He broke in his last start. So his debut at Belmont, it was in a tough race, and he shows a little bit of speed, but he's gone from September to April, so there's something went amiss. He comes back, he breaks inward, but he breaks pretty well. He tracks back to about 6th. He's inside, he's about 5 lengths off, he's in a tight spot, he moves into contention, but he couldn't get to the lone speed winner that day. And he ends up losing second late in the stretch. Now he goes second off the long layoff. He picks up Morales. Plenty of things to like in here. Should be very, very live with a little extra distance. U.S. Delta Force. That's the number 2. Maybe a late exotic single. I think if you get over 2-1, that's value. So at Tampa, in race number 2, it's the 6. He's smoking now. 7-2, the value line there. In the 3rd race, the number 9, highly explosive. Value line about 8-1 there on the 9. In the 5th race, the number 3, Redeem My Heart, 7-2. It looks fair there. In the 7th race, the number 3, Channeled Ed's Long Shot, 7-2 or so. In the 9th race, the number 2, U.S. Delta Force, around 9-5. Seems fair, so maybe a late exotic single, or we'll look for the value if we can get it there on that one. Let's head over to Gulfstream for Friday and close things out. Finishing up the racing talk with some Gulfstream for Friday, May the 8th. Some plays here, then I'll give you a little bit of a late pick 4. Let's go to race number 1 with the number 7, Haffey. She debuted against Maiden Special Weight. I think she's in too tough. She drops in at the Maiden claiming level last time out, and she just has a slow start. She's forced 5 wide into the turn, 3-4 deep at the back of the pack. It just has no shot winning with that kind of a trip, and you're chasing a lone speed winner that day. So I think the 7 Haffey, expect a better start, expect this one to show a lot more. If you can get like over 3-1, that seems like a fair price in a weak race. Let's jump to race number 6, and let's go to the number 2, Commanding Lady, who was a step slow last time out, and she ends up outrun at the rear. She's 4 wide. She moves up slightly. I think she was just in a little bit too tough against the Maiden 50s. And now you're in at the Maiden 16. You got that little race under your belt. Should be a little more fit now. 2 back, lost to a horse in that Maiden 50 that won by 9 lengths next time out. So she's coming out of some strong races. And this is not a group of monsters. The number 2, Commanding Lady. Same type of thing. If we can get around 3-1 or so, that feels fair. Let's move to race number 8. And you can play late pick 4 starting in race number 8. So the way I will is I'm going to use the 10 as a big price in here, Bayou Prospect. He had a fine start, and this was his first time going long on the grass, and he's going to be in a similar type situation, going 7.5 furlongs when he went a mile last time out. He was at the back of the pack. He settled mid-pack. He's 6 lengths off or so. He's in between horses, and then he goes down to the inside. He splits horses. He angles around. It's a driving finish. It was a good win, just a good, clean win. I think he's a horse to use in all of your exotics. If you get over 10-1, that feels fair. The 4 Dyna Drive was claimed by a really good claim barn. They're so good when they move a horse to the grass too, and they couldn't get on the grass last time out. So unfortunately, they stuck in the race that was taken off the grass, and they ran pretty well, finishing second. Now you're going to go back to the grass. Joel's jumping aboard, obviously a major player. The 5 Rhythm section, top contender, tough to exclude. This one shows a major improvement, stepping up and beating a group of maiden specials. And then the 12, Uncork the Bottle, gets back to the green. I mean, just look at the grass races. It's tough to knock the form. So we'll use those 4, 5, 10, and 12 in the late pick 4 in race number 8. in race number 9, the 5 is one that's, maybe a little bit interesting, that's not quite as obvious. Blue Ridge Mountain. So he had a fine debut at Laurel. He broke from the rail and he finished second that day sprinting. Then he stretches out in the slop. And so between those two races, we know that he's fine on the dirt because he ran well on the dirt on the debut. We know that he's fine going long because he won going long even though it was in the slop. So no problem with the distance, no problem with the surface. February the 1st, he just hooks a really tough group. He faced a lot better. It's a race that's come back and produced a next out winner already, and it's a race that was sandwiched by a couple short layoffs. He comes back last time out and he takes a shot on the turf. Okay, maybe he just doesn't want to go on the grass. You can make legitimate excuses for those two. If you're playing him just off his first 2 races, I think he fits really nicely in here. That's the number 5. Blue Ridge Mountain. The 1, Dizzy Sight also makes sense. The 2, Frank First. The 3, Flute Maker. All very obvious, logical contenders that I would use in the pick 4. 1, 2, 3, and 5. And then the 10th race is one where you're probably going to have to use a few, I guess. I would start with the 7, who had a lot of trouble 2 starts back and then was super impressive. Was one of the horses that we played on April the 2nd, but was more of like a kind of an exotic single type play. Dixie in Candyland. So make sure to include her on all of your tickets. She's really kind of coming into her own and figuring things out now. This is a really good spot for her. The 1, Our Happy Ending, there's not a ton of speed, and so I think it might come from the couple of inside horses. I would use the 1 and even the 2 at a big price, Regal Chan, if he's in here. He may have the opportunity to just get asked, and if he catches this field sleeping a little bit, making her turf debut, she could be really tough. So the 7, the 1, and the 6 is kind of my top tier Hidden Facts. I think Hidden Facts makes a lot of sense. And then I would have Regal Chant underneath them, also with Kitten's Cover Girl as a horse who would be no shock. I mean, she has enough speed to be right on the lead if need be, and if they ask her from out wide, maybe she's able to kind of get over and clear. So I'd be fine with 1, 2, 6, 7, and 11 in race number 10. And then to close it out, if you want to single the 1, Ocean Fire, I'm fine with that. She sat close. She was 3 wide into the turn. She sat second. She kind of took back a couple lengths. She moves to the lead in between. She just misses. It's a wicked beat. That's against Better. So this drop should put her over the top because she's been knocking on the door for a while. But if you don't want to just single a horse who's 0 for 8 and a barn who's really been struggling at the meet, maybe you include the 2 also Florado. If you look at her last 2 starts, she got in trouble in both of them. On February the 26th, she had a good start. She was right on the lead, but she chose to sit inside third, 3 lengths off. She was in tight. She was waiting behind horses with nowhere to go. She got clear late. She ends up winning the battle for third. Then last time out, she's tucked inside, but she's in very tight. She's right up on heels. She has a brutal trip with absolutely nowhere to go. And still finishing second, ducking down to the inside, and almost wins the race. But this group, with just the presence of the dropper, Ocean Fire, is going to be a little bit tougher than what she's been facing. I would use the 2 inside horses, and if you want to single the 1, Ocean Fire, I'm fine with that. So the Gulfstream plays for Friday, May the 8th. First race, the number 7, Haffy. 3-1 is the value line there. 6th race, the number 2, Commanding Lady. 3-1 is the value line there. 8th race, the 10, Bayou Prospector. 10-1. 9th race, the 5, Blue Ridge Mountain. We want to get around at least 4-1. And the 10th race, the 7, Dixie and Candyland. We'd want around 4-1 on that one as well. So something like this in a pick 4, I would go 4, 5, 10, 12 with 1, 2, 3, 5 with 1, 2, 6, 7, 11 with 1, 2. And if you guys want to single the 1 in the, you guys and gals want to single the 1 in the last, that's fine by me. But I'll probably double up with the deuce in there also. Good luck Thursday. Good luck Friday. That's racing for this episode, but we will have some weekend racing. We'll talk a little Gulfstream and probably a little Tampa for Saturday and for Sunday on the next episode of That's What G Said. Right now, we close things out with SummerSlam 92. It is one of the coolest events visually in WWF history, and Jason Beem and Danny Kovoloff joined me to discuss every match, all the promos, what was happening in the World Wrestling Federation in 1992. kick back and enjoy. Get the popcorn ready. It's time for the SummerSlam 1992 recap. Back again to talk some old wrestling, but in fact, this time we're not going to be talking WrestleMania. It's actually going to be the first time we're talking a non-WrestleMania recap show. But I will say, as Jason Beem and Danny Kovoloff join me, Jason, this really does feel like a WrestleMania with the scope immediately. I mean, before we even get it, 30 seconds into the show, Vince is already using all the WrestleMania words, the grandeur, the pageantry. So this is a really, really fun show, and the crowd just helps it a ton.
I think it's one of the best atmospheres of any wrestling event ever. To me, that was always what was so fun about going back and watching it, was remembering, there was an urgency, obviously, because it's, the first time they'd have a big event like that in Britain, and the Bulldog was the headliner and stuff. But, it was just literally from the start of the show to the end of the show, the crowd never really let up. Even during some of the not-so-great matches, they were still into it.
You felt that electricity, and it just felt like so much of a bigger deal than any other non-WrestleMania shows that they'd done to that point. You got the visual with Wembley Stadium, rabid crowd chanting 80,000 plus, Union Jacks hanging in there, and yeah, it was a spectacle.
And to make it even, what's kind of crazy about it is that it's such a good show, it's such a big feel. This is actually the first pay-per-view without Hulk Hogan. In WWF. We had been so used to Hulk Hogan closing every show, the pose at the end, you're going to hear Hulk's music no matter what. And this was the first time in a really long time we had no Hulk Hogan here, and this show did not suffer one bit. 92 was a real kind of changing of the guard in WWF. There was a lot of behind the scenes things going on with the steroid trial, and a lot of WWF and Vince McMahon were involved in this big steroid scandal. So what we started to see was a lot less of the big, strong guy in the main event. We saw a lot more wrestling kind of come into play. And that's where Bret Hart kind of took the ball for the next few years, and Shawn Michaels, they kind of take the ball and run with it. But this is a good show. And a lot of things change in this show because, I think initially Ultimate Warrior was supposed to turn heel. He didn't want to. They end up changing the matches a little bit because this is in the UK, because they wanted to build the show around the Bulldog, and he was super popular, as you could imagine, anytime they would go on European tours. So it's just a WrestleMania feel at SummerSlam 92. And as we've been talking and joking about this show and texting back and forth about it for the last couple weeks, I think one of our favorite parts of the show, if not our favorite, right off the damn bat. We get SummerSlam brought to you by Ico Pro.
Literally, I put a note about Ico Pro. I remember when that came about, and they were very vague for a long time. We didn't really know what it was.
I know.
I didn't know if it was a medication, or I use that word with big fat quotation marks around it, or a program, or a clothing line. I just remember seeing Vince wearing the Ico Pro, heavyweight tank top with his back bulging out.
I remember thinking it was some kind of muscle milk or energy drink that you were supposed to do. I didn't know any of that stuff.
We got the big Ico Pro banners just a year later hanging at Monday Night Raw all the time, and for a little while we were definitely getting the Ico Pro everything. Then we get the fans. This is great. So we get the fans. The one thing that is great is that anytime something anyone from the U.S. in TV, movies, sporting events goes to the UK, goes to England, they have to really lay it on thick with the old England ancestry, and really, it just can't be you're visiting another place.
Yeah, they resurrected Lord Alfred, right?
I know. Oh yeah, they did. And so it's very you get, as Danny said, lots of Union Jacks. It's very, exactly where you are right away. And we get the fans, and some of them, their accent's so thick you can't even understand what they're saying. But the one kid says, they're interviewing, kids, and what do you think? And they're all excited to be here, this and that. And the one kid
Bret
said,
Hart. We love this guy.
I love him. And the one, I think he's wearing a big boss man hat too. The kid, he says, the British Bulldog is gonna win whether he wants to or not, which is just, it's actually true. because even if he doesn't want to win, if he's booked to win, he's going to win anyway. So I guess the kid knows what he's talking about.
No, I think this kid is a little jerk, and I mean, that's a threat. Like, he was making a threat to people. Like, he was telling Vince, he's like, look, the Bulldog's going to win whether he wants to or not. So, like this kid's probably taking people out at the knees right now. He's probably 35.
Wouldn't be surprised if Bret Hart had some similar sentiments that night. British Bulldog's going to have a 5-star match whether he wants to or not.
Yeah,
there were a lot of kind of things too that were playing behind the scenes, like all reports. If you've read or like listened to any of the stuff that Bret's put out there, or any of the scathing stuff that Diana Hart in like a book that you can't really find very much anymore. The Bulldog was supposedly just drugged out of his mind on this show. He had been not in a great place recently, and he like told Bret right before, like, I'm messed up. And then there's one point like early on in the match where he just kind of says, Bret, I'm fucked. And he just didn't know. He like forgot the way they laid out the rest of the match, which is incredible because the match is so damn good and Bret like carries him through it. But I mean, he's messed up in the main event. In the first match that we see, Hawk is like not in a great place. He ends up not getting on the plane and flying back with the WWF when they come back. And this is so we open things up. It's Money Inc. versus the LOD, and this is the last time we see the LOD in the WWF until '97 when they return with Sonny. So for about 5 years or so, DiBiase looks awesome in his all white. I love when he had the white.
Yeah, I didn't remember when he wore white.
Was
this a rare?
It was like a summer. I think it was just the summer, like when he would bust it out in the summer.
While he was making his summertime residence in Palm Beach, Florida.
Yeah, in Monaco or whatever.
Yeah. There's a great line where Bobby says, what is the net worth of this tag team? Maybe it's Vince that says it. But it's funny because like if IRS is an auditor, like he's making a a good living. But like that's not like a net worth kind of job.
He's supposed to be kind of the opposite.
He's a heel though, so maybe he's skimming a little off the top.
He's stealing our because it's always the hypocrites, right? He's calling everybody a tax cheat, and meanwhile, who knows what his paperwork looks like? Wouldn't it be funny if like the real guy got arrested for tax evasion?
Tax evasion, just like it was like he's too in the character, just like really living the IRS gimmick. But no matter what, we get the crazy pop. I mean, this crowd was so like just hungry for anything. Like you said, Jason, like even through some of the matches that are not great or really short or just obvious squash matches, they were up and they were crazy for the LOD.
I thought they were popping for Rocco over there.
Oh my gosh. So at this point, LOD comes down to the ring with their manager, Paul Ellering. And when they brought Paul Ellering back, there was a storyline that said that the Legion of Doom was like losing. They weren't in touch with their roots anymore. So they brought him back to the streets of Chicago and they would go there to try to like find themselves.
And they found Minneapolis, by the way.
Yeah. They found a ventriloquist dummy that used to be their dummy named Rocco. I mean, this was a silly storyline, mainly because like LOD never did anything cartoony or charactery like this. Like they're pretty just badass guys. They're just going to come in and beat you up, you know. And so you put the Rocco and this with it was not a good like end of the run, this first run with LOD to end WWF, but. Jason, this was a badass entrance though when they come in with the Harleys on the motorcycles. They actually announce Rocco too. He announces Ellering with Rocco. with Rocco. So what'd you think about this match overall? You know what? I thought this was Jason, like I see LOD, I see Money Inc. You're not sure exactly what it's going to be, but this was fun, and a lot of these matches definitely got boosted by the crowd. I think these guys continue to like work a little bit harder when the crowd's picking you up.
Yeah, there's a few spots, including in the Bulldog and Hart match, which we'll get to, where there's a lot of like long choke holds, which are pretty much dead nowadays. Now it's like you have to kind of constantly spot, and this match was kind of a little methodical at its start because they were all kind of standing around in the ring before they really got cranking. And DiBiase early on gets out of the ring, collects himself. So I mean, it didn't have a breakneck pace, but like you said, I mean, to me the whole theme of the show is the crowd because it really keeps everything, going throughout the day. And I know that there's always the stories about Hawk in this match, but like I thought, I mean. I don't know. Like I didn't see it. Same with Bulldog.
Me either. No.
To
I
me,
didn't see it at all.
Everything looks kind of on the up and up. Like, I mean, the guy's driving a motorcycle down a thin alleyway. Like, if he's messed up, like, I mean, he was straight as a string coming down there.
I agree.
So.
It's hard, even knowing that we see, like, we know that we still can't find it. Danny, what'd you think about this one?
That was I think a definition of a hot opener. You know,
Yeah.
LOD coming down like that, they're cool no matter what. They're going to pop any crowd anywhere. When you've got you know, the rabid London audience, all for it. Two guys, you want to find two guys easier to hate than Ted DiBiase and IRS, and I thought it was a good opener. I hadn't seen this show in years and years. Completely took me by surprise when Animal took out DiBiase with a power slam. That was the 1, 2, 3. I'm like, oh, that was that.
Yeah, it was kind of abrupt. Right after the match.
Gino, can I mention Joey Morella's count on the final 3? He moves like literally a different position for each count. Like, he's down by their feet when he hits the 1, he's mid-body by the 2, and he's like at their head by 3. Go back and watch it if you get a chance.
Okay, I will. I didn't even notice that.
Like, he literally is like
He's
hopping
like
up and
sliding.
down. Yeah, like on each count. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, so what I liked about this was, you know, this was more than just your typical LOD beatdown squash. They actually sold pretty well in here. It was a good back and forth tag, and one of my favorite spots in like the old matches, and we always got these in the Hogan matches, was the you know, when they put him in the rest hold in like the headlock, and they drop the arm the 2 times, and then the arm's gonna drop on the 3rd time, but he doesn't drop, and then he builds it back up. That was always a fun spot I loved when I was a kid, because like, no, it's not gonna drop 3 times, and I mean, when did you ever see anyone lose that way when their arm dropped 3 times? Never. But I still always thought that there may be a chance.
Yeah, because even on the sleeper, they'd check it once and they'd call it over.
I got a tangent off that just for a second.
Please.
15 years later, or was it 10 years later, when it's Brock versus Hogan on SmackDown, right before Brock beats Rock at SummerSlam for the world title a few weeks later, they put him in against the Hulkster, who's in his nostalgia run at this time. Finish is Brock gets him in this tight bear hug. Arm drops once, twice, 3rd time passes out. And
Wow,
I
I forgot that.
Yeah, no, and it just put Brock over huge, because, you know, you'd never seen face good guy Hogan just go out like that.
Yeah,
So
I forgot. That's a good point. Good pull, Danny Kaye. Yeah, and then how about right at the very end when they just count the pin, Bobby just says, "That stinks." Just right after. Just so stupid. And then he's like, "What?" He's like, "LOD," and then Vince is like, "What?" He's like, "LOD, what? Legion of Doom 1." You know, just like, that stinks. So we get to Mean Gene backstage, who's with Flair. Flair's mad he isn't the #1 contender. You know, the storyline was kind of weird, because the storyline is actually more about Mr. Perfect than Flair. So he's kind of in no man's land here. He doesn't really have like much to discuss. It's crazy. I know they didn't have anything, but you could have. You figure you're in the UK. I'm still shocked they couldn't get him in a squash match somewhere on this card, just to like get him on the card wrestling, have him beat someone, because Ric Flair is going to win the title back 2 days after this. This is actually taped on August the 29th, 1992. It's shown on August the 31st on pay-per-view in the US, and then on a taping September the 1st, he loses the title back to Ric Flair. Macho Man loses the title back to Ric Flair. So we get Flair. He's just kind of teasing whose corner him and Perfect are going to be in. We get a little sense of that Ric Flair promo when he talks about bright lights. Big city means London. SummerSlam, WWF, Ric Flair. And I mean, just kind of setting up that he and Mr. Perfect are going to be involved throughout the rest of the night. But it's a bummer, Jason, because it's like we could have gotten so much more with Ric Flair after the 1 year and a half run he had in the WWF. Felt like there was still so much more meat on the bone.
Yeah, I was never a Flair guy, because I was very much a WWE, not an NWA guy back in the WrestleMania 3, 4, 5 era. And so Flair to me was always like the other team, the other enemy kind of guy. So when he came over, I was like, oh, not this guy, you know. And so I didn't kind of gain an appreciation for him until I was older. And as you talked about, like, they're a real linchpin of this show. And if you don't know the story, which I know they do go back toward the end and kind of update you, but I remember watching these first interviews and I'm like, why? I don't care if either of these guys are down by the ring. Like, who cares whose corner they're? You know,
I know
like
it was.
It just felt a little bit forced to try to give more drama. There's a lot of people out there that like kind of hate on the Warrior, and like his matches with Savage were both, at least the two big ones, were awesome. And so I've never, like, I get, okay, he comes in and he does his 5 moves or whatever, but like the atmosphere for the Savage match this time and the one in WrestleMania 7 were incredible. And so
both Savages, Hogan, and the Root matches, like all of his big matches were pretty darn good. It was just like consistency over and over, and I guess he didn't really draw when they put the rocket on him. But what did you think of this whole like Flair perfect storyline interweaving with them, Danny?
I thought it was really awkward and weird at the time, and watching it back, it still comes across as really awkward and weird. Here you've got Savage and Warrior, who a year and a half earlier, were engaged in a blood feud leading to a retirement match at WrestleMania 7. This is the first big matchup since then. With those Savage reinstated WWE or WWF champion. The Flair stuff just felt a little extra. They're both baby faces at this point. Why is neither one just saying, "Oh yeah, Mr. Perfect, he's not in my corner"?
I know. Why couldn't we just get a promo from either one of them in the first half of the show when they were just like, "Nope, he's not in my corner"?
Well, and that's like the second they both walk out, which I guess we probably shouldn't get ahead, but like the second they both walk in, they're like, "Well, he's not in the Warrior's corner." And it's like, Jesus, calm down, boys.
So we then get on to Virgil versus Nails. Poor Virgil too was like, Virgil was basically Coco Beware, sort of Tito Santana. It's like, when you see Virgil coming out, he's gonna lose. He had the little run with DiBiase.
Oh, he beat DiBiase.
He beat Deebs. At this point, he's definitely jobber to the new. And they were kind of high on Nails early, but man, is Nails horrible in the ring. I mean, he is so sloppy. He can't bump. If he's, let's say this, if he is trying to be this bad, and I know he's not because I've seen some of his previous work before he came in, he was in the AWA and other stuff, and then he was in WCW briefly after this as the Prisoner. If he's trying to be that bad, he's the greatest actor I've ever seen in my life. If he's trying to be like a stiff prisoner, because he is awful. I mean, he wins this match in 3 minutes with a chokehold. That first match, the LOD one, went just under 12. It went 11:58. And I mean, this is just sloppy. But even this, Jason, the crowd is like super into Virgil kind of getting a comeback spot or like any little offense that Virgil gets in. They're still into this match.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Virgil drops a "too legit to quit" during the promo.
Oh, the promo before, yeah,
it's pretty bad.
It is.
Like Virgil was never a good. Like he was. You realize that for years, DiBiase was giving great promos, while Virgil was just sitting there saying nothing, and then would like throw a $100 bill at somebody. But like he's just very stiff. I'm gonna come and do this. I'm gonna go for a win.
Do unto others could before they do unto you.
Yeah, I mean, it was just really bad, cliche, and this match reminded me of a squash match that happened the next year at SummerSlam when Ludwig Borga beat up on Marty Jannetty. Like
there we go.
It was the new guy, taking on the previous guy. I mean, I know Snuka kind of did it for Undertaker too, and they just basically had him go out there and kick the crap out of a guy who was, because I remember the Jannetty one. They're like, "This is a former Intercontinental Champion."
Yeah,
and they got to give him somebody with a little bit of credibility that'll still let the guy go over. But yeah, I mean, it was it was what it was.
Yeah, no, Nails was big, and that's about all he had going for him. But I always wondered if he's an ex-convict, why he's still wearing his orange jumpsuit. I know Andy Dufresne wasn't in his jumpsuit 5 seconds after he got out of Shawshank.
I was reading one of the reviews on this somewhere, and they said, in the lead up to this, so we start to see Nails in May '92, and he comes on, he's cutting promos, and he's got vignettes from jail. And he's talking about how he's about to be released from jail, and that when he does, he's going to be taking his revenge out on the Big Boss Man. And so that's like, glad to see they still let him out of prison after he's making death threats on national TV.
But didn't Nails
had a job lined up?
Well, didn't Nails' WWE career come to an end because of like assaulting Vince?
Right after this, that's
Yeah.
that's the rumor, is that he attacked Vince following this, and we did not see Nails. He was around Survivor Series '92. He's there. He has that big the match with the Boss Man, and then that's pretty much it for Nails in the WWF. He apparently choked Vince. He hated Vince. He actually testified against Vince in the steroid trial, and he was like one of the more scathing testification that people that testified. And he had the only reason what hurt him is while he's testifying, he says, "I effing hate Vince McMahon." Like the first thing he says. So
Yeah.
then everything else you say after that, it's hard to believe when you just say,
Yeah.
I hate this guy. Nonetheless,
Nails. Nails with a Z, right?
Nails with a Z gets the win here, and they built him up for a little while for this little feud with Boss Man, who, what I will say about Boss Man, he was always someone who they had something for. They had the Mountie stuff with him, which was fun, and then they had
I
the
thought
Nails.
the Boss Man was good. I mean,
I always liked him. I did too. He was a really good fit in the mid card, and we'll see Boss Man and Nails hook up a little later in '92. So now we get to. We get creepy Lord Alfred backstage. Poor Lord Alfred. He was like very in the Mean Gene. Whenever there was like a good looking girl back early on in WWF, he would always be very flirty with her and super uncomfortable a lot of the time. He's just looking around. They wanted to give Lord Alfred a look back here because they're in the UK. So getting him on the show a couple times, just looking around. He's trying to get in touch with Macho Man. He's
we're
trying
here
to
at
get
the
in touch.
locker room of Mr. Perfect, who's trying to, we don't want to see you for the ultimate. Yeah, like he's like subdued Lord Alfred too. They used to put him on color with Gorilla, like on random like MSG shows and stuff, and it was pretty funny because Gorilla's
funny.
pretty slick broadcasting, and Lord Alfred would be like, "Well, Gorilla, I must tell you, this Coco Beware is a very strong man."
Yeah.
He'd get all into it and stuff. Yeah, he was. He's one of those guys at the time I didn't like him, but now I kind of do.
He gets you a laugh. You look back at him, and he's kind of funny. I think that's what Vince kept him around. They said that Vince just loved his accent, and he would come out, and Vince would go, "Listen to him talk," So we get Sherry with Mean Gene, and then we get all the setup and all the footage for the backstory for Shawn Michaels versus Rick Martel. This was fun. This had a good kind of a good build, but what was weird about this match for the time, Jason, was we have a heel versus heel match, which you didn't see very often. We see a couple babyface versus babyface matches on this very show, but we don't see, because the heel matches are a little bit harder because sometimes the crowd doesn't know what to do. I think in this match, the crowd for the first few minutes was kind of figuring things out, but I think the gimmick kind of helped, and Sherry kind of doing her stuff outside the ring. This was pretty fun, and we'll talk more about the end of the match and afterwards, but it's okay. Both these guys work good. You could tell that they're really liking Shawn Michaels now, and they're starting to build him up to be the next guy. He was actually supposed to win the IC title at this show, but they changed. He was going to beat Brett, but when they changed the venue and they ended up going to the UK, they put the title on the Bulldog, and then in a couple months, Shawn ends up winning the title from the Bulldog on a Saturday Night's Main Event. So fun. The stipulation was, kind of goofy. The model was in a lot of these goofy stipulation matches
Don't hit him
too.
in the face, right?
Yeah, don't hit him in the face. He has to be blindfolded. What'd you think about this one, Jason?
I will say I fell asleep watching it, but I was watching it late at night the other night, and this was where I made it to, so I had to go back and rewatch it. And it seemed like it was a long match, and I love the move where Model like dodges a punch or a kick or whatever and does the
cartwheel.
No, not the. Well, he does jumping jacks.
Jumping jacks. Yes.
Like it's and it does seem like by the end that he kind of takes the role of the baby face in this one, but I don't know, the Sherry with her just weird passing out thing at the end. I never kind of got if it was. I mean, if she was faking, I mean, obviously she's faking, but if she was like, were we supposed to know she was faking, or was it real, and it was like very dramatic, and I don't know, it just got a little, not my favorite match on the card, which I know was supposed to be kind of a good one.
I always walked away from it thinking that she was faking it, and we were supposed to think, oh, look at her, she's just looking for attention. That's how I took it, and your mileage may vary. Her outfit pretty risque for a 1992 WWF. She's just got a thong and nothing in the back.
She's basically wearing assless chaps.
Completely. And I remember Heenan had a line in there, "That's the worst case of moths I've ever seen," and I just cracked up.
It's funny with Heenan. I mean, you kind of gotta. Jesse used to be so over the top with his humor. Like like Heenan, you can miss some of them if you're not paying attention.
You have to. You're gonna say because Heenan is like, that's the one thing about him is maybe with Jesse. Like I think Jesse kind of had his running gags, and Bobby did too. But Bobby is so quick. Like there's no way a lot of his material he even had before. He's just going off the cuff and just responding and reacting to everything that he's seeing, which is the best kind of comedy, you know, not the one like the pre-canned stuff that's you mess it up, you mess up the delivery. He's just unbelievable. So after the match, so they're fighting outside the ring. It ends up going to a double disqualification. Or early in the match, Bobby says Rick, Shawn, and him all have a way with the ladies, and then Vince says "Lady Giraffes," which was just like, okay.
Yeah.
We get the old spot with both of these guys where they're trying to give the cover and they pull the tights down, so we get some butt cheeks shown here from both of the fellas. We get the butt puns from Bobby and from Vince, and then that's when Sherry does the fake feint, and both men are fighting outside the ring down the really long aisle, and
I'm a fan of the long aisle.
Love them. It feels like a bigger show.
When Ultimate Warrior won the Intercontinental from Honky Tonk Man, it was like the shortest aisle ever, and I thought that I know that whole match was a short thing, but like his run when it's a long run is so much cooler. Like it's just neater. Like some of those old aisles, they used to have to like go left, right, left, you know, like they jagged it way. But I love a big, wide, long aisle because like WrestleMania 4, like people were groping Elizabeth, like it was kind of gross.
Yeah.
Looking back.
So where are we? So they're in the aisle, and so double DQ, Sherry faints, so Shawn goes and picks her up, and Shawn is walking down the aisle, and man, at this point, her butt is just right out there in the camera when he's carrying her, and Vince asks if it's Jupiter, and Brain says it's the moon, and Vince starts to mention Twin Peaks, and then Brain says it's Twin Cheeks, and then I mean so Shawn Michaels is carrying Sherry out, and Rick Martel runs up from behind, and he nails Shawn, and he just drops Sherry. I mean, hard, like pretty hard, right on the floor. She takes a dive. She goes rolling. So then they're fighting a little bit. Then Rick Martel goes and picks up Sherry, and he's walking down the aisle, and Shawn runs from the back, and he nails Rick, and then Sherry falls again really hard. I mean, she takes a couple dives here, and at the very end, Rick Martel comes out, pours water on Sherry's face, who's like freaking out and going crazy and runs back. I mean, this was more of like, I guess more even about the match more about the match. This was about the storyline.
Yeah, I'll say no hitting in the face is probably one of my favorite goofy stipulations of all time.
Yeah. Two lesser workers would have really struggled with something like this, but they did a good job. They were in and out. Match ends up going just over 8 minutes here.
That's all it was?
It felt like longer, right? I thought it was like a
20-minute deal.
You get an extra like 5 or 6 after the bell, you know, with them in the aisle, running up and down, back and forth, pouring the water on her, all that stuff. We then get the Nasty Boys. They're cutting a promo. They're making fun of Sherry. They talk about the tag team titles. Nothing much really here. As we get to the Beverly Brothers with the Genius, Jason, who I know is one of your favorites.
Big
the
fan.
Genius.
Love me some Lanny Poffo.
He is great. And they face the Natural Disasters. And, you know, I look at this match on paper, and I think probably a lot of other people would look at it on paper and go, okay, Beverly Brothers, Natural Disasters. This was a much better match than I remembered, and it was much better than I kind of was expecting. The Natural Disasters, they kept up a pretty quick pace for them. The Beverly Brothers
don't seem like tag guys, do they?
No. Yeah. And the Beverly Brothers are a good tag team. They're just like a solid heel tag team. They're good workers. They have the the Genius in there cheating with them. It was a pretty typical tag match for the most part. They're working over Typhoon for a while, and then Earthquake comes in, and one of the Beverly Brothers had just been handed the metal scroll from the Genius, and he hits Typhoon in the back, and so he's pinning Typhoon. Earthquake comes in, and he drops this elbow on the back of his head while he's on top of Typhoon. Yeah. Oh my God. I was like, geez, this thing was nasty. And And then after that, it's basically Earthquake dominating the rest of the match. And you know what, Danny? I kind of forgot about how over Earthquake was for the next few months here. And then even all the way up into like the very end of his run, I think he leaves for a little bit. He comes back. He has like a little late run in like 94 where he's like pitted up against Yokozuna too. But he was really over here. This was better than I remember it being.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was just the pairing with Typhoon, or if people were just you're kind of buying sympathetic Earthquake as just a really tough monster baby face. But yeah, I remember being into him, and people were into him just 2 years after he was the most hated guy on the roster. And yeah, the stuff with Yokozuna, he got to show off his sumo chops a couple of years later, but I don't have anything to back this up, but legitimately, he seemed like he might have been one of the toughest guys in the Federation at the time.
Danny, I'm glad you said that, because I have a note that said I feel like both Earthquake and Typhoon are kind of legit tough guys. Earthquake we know was, I mean, like he was a sumo guy and just kind of a bad dude. But 3 out of the 4 guys in the ring had a mullet. I think Earthquake the only one without one. We're kind of phasing out of that.
Yeah, except for Crush.
Oh, Crushes is majestic. Yeah, the thing I always weirdly remember about the Beverly Brothers is they're from Shaker Heights, Ohio, which is the town next to where Thistledown racetrack.
Oh,
nice. And so I remember driving to Thistledown one time when we went to dinner in Shaker Heights, and I go, "Oh, this is where the Beverly Brothers are from." And but yeah, I mean, I think you guys summed it up perfectly. And like I said, when I jumped in and said like they don't seem like a tag, I think we're just so accustomed to tag teams, kind of, the aerial tag team was real popular back then, obviously the Rockers and stuff like that, and so these guys were very much not that, but both like pretty agile big guys. Like they weren't Andre and Haku or something like that from just a couple of years before. So they worked. And Earthquake, to me, I mean, he died when he was 42. It's hard to imagine that, because he seemed like he was around for quite a while.
Yeah, he goes to WCW for a while. He's the Shark, and he's in the Faces of Fear, I believe, that the alliance to end Hulkamania and all those things. And then he comes back, and he's in the Oddities. He's Golga, who's always wearing the South Park shirt, like years later. And he's wearing the mask. He's always got the Cartman shirt on. Yeah, this was pretty fun. Much better than I had remembered when we were kind of going through. And whenever I see the Beverly Brothers, I have to just say the Brothers Beverly, in the genius voice, like
the Brothers Beverly here at SummerSlam. They are.
Yeah, to me that's who they are. They're not the Beverly Brothers. They're the Brothers Beverly. And yeah, they had a good little heel run at this time in WWE.
They weren't actually brothers, right?
No. Mikey Enos and then I'm not sure the other one off the top of my head, but yeah, they're fun. It was Mike
Enos and Wayne Bloom.
There we go. Nice. Wayne Bloom. Nice. So we get to Mean Genie's backstage with the Bushwhackers. This is just a quick little promo. The Bushwhackers and the Nasty Boys, who we saw earlier, had a dark match on the show. So they're there more than just cutting these little goofy promos, but he talks about whose corner Mr. Perfect was going to be in. Mean Gene asks Luke about a dentist selling him a London Bridge, and they ask about a royal dinner, and they talk about the royal throne, referencing that it's a toilet. And then we get more Lord Alfred. He thinks Mr. Perfect is inside Ultimate Warrior's dressing room, and he says, "I'm going to go against my journalistic instincts, and I'm going to open this door." And then he opens the door and gets slammed in his face. And
then he's like aghast by it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness!
Yeah, you literally walked into a dressing room, dude. What do you expect?
Yeah, you just open this door. So the next match, Repo Man versus Crush. I wish they would have been talking about how these were two former tag team partners just a year ago. Two guys that were in Demolition together. Repo Man used to be Smash, and I will say, Repo Man was never a character that was going to be like the champ, but he did you don't know it's the same guy. You don't look at Repo Man and go,
for sure.
And that's Smash, because he's always like hunched over. When he's a Repo Man, he's always hunched over. He's sneaking around. He did a really good job of like making sure you knew that this was not the same guy. And Crush was super popular early on. They really liked Crush. Crush was reportedly on one of those short lists of guys that maybe one of the next WWE champs when Ultimate Warrior had to leave and when all the steroid stuff was going on, even though Crush is kind of a big guy too. But Jason, I know you're going to mention this mullet is majestic.
Yeah, it's a thing of beauty, especially blowing in that London breeze with the outdoor. But the thing I never got about Repo Man was like, I guess I didn't think of Repo Men as like thieves. Like I just think they just go show up in your driveway and take your car back because you owe it to the lender, kind of thing. And so I never got if he was like supposed to be like a crook or even who knows. But I love how I think he's billed from the Motor City. Which is great. And I mean, it is kind of one of those gimmicks like the Red Rooster or like, 100 other ones where they probably gave it to him and he probably realized, well, I'm on my way out now, so I guess I'm going to do this for a year. And, but I mean, I know a lot of the guys in the business, like I think they have a better outlook on that kind of stuff. Like they're happy to be working. They're happy to be doing it. They know they're not a top guy anymore or something like that.
It's like an actor. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
I mean, sometimes like someone's got to pay the fat guy sometimes or the ugly guy or, or like whatever.
And it happens in modern wrestling too, right? Like Kofi was kind of lingering around for the last few years and then had like an incredible run. And I think the fan base now, I wouldn't be surprised if like Cesaro came back and made a 100%. Big run because the fans eventually they like the underdog, and if they see you paying your dues like that, I think they'll kind of get back behind you. They were never obviously going to get behind Repo Man. When was the last gimmick? Like, who was the last real true gimmick? I mean, I know the Undertaker's. I mean, he's not even really a gimmick at this point. I mean, like everybody is pretty much just themselves now, right?
I know No Way Jose was just released, but that was a gimmick if nothing else was.
Yeah.
Yeah, like. I'm trying to think. In like AEW, they have like the Dark Order, which is kind of like a dark like group, and for the most part, we haven't had too many gimmicks. I always remember when they say that like there's one of the documentaries that Pat Patterson's in, and he said, "Yeah, he said some people didn't look like a wrestler, and so you just put something on them, and then boom, there you are."
I mean, have you ever seen the video of Hulk Hogan's first match ever in WWF? It's funny, Gino. Go to YouTube and look up Hulk Hogan's first WWF match. The guy he's wrestling is. It's literally like they found the plumber from downstairs and we're like, "Hey, do you want to go into the ring real quick?" And the comments underneath the video are so funny. They're like, "Oh, I'll never forget this night. One of the biggest nights when Luis Castillo finally came." The comments are so funny. I'm going to DM both of you guys.
Please.
Right
Gotta have check that one out. But
I know the match. I don't know the comments.
So. Oh, I watched it like 3 days ago. I laughed for 20 minutes reading through that. It's so funny.
So Crush has the head squeeze move with his finisher. This wasn't long, but the crowd was pretty into it. So I think we were on you, Danny. What did you think about this? And then kind of like the Crush character overall.
At the time, I didn't even realize this was Demolition Exploding. And
right?
God bless Barry Darso. He just completely got into the Repo Man gimmick way over the top more than most other guys would. And he killed him. Like you said, never was going to be a main eventer, but 30 years later, everyone remembers Repo Man.
I always love, like in Survivor Series, he'd be in the group and he'd be kind of in the back and like holding up his rope, like, "Look, I got my rope, guys." Yeah,
just doing the like cackle,
awful laugh.
Oh, Repo Man. Yeah, he had one where he in '93 where it's like a little small feud where he stole Macho Man's hat on Monday Night Raw, and they went, and then it was like that one like extended over like two different.
Oh,
shows.
I mean those like '93 Raws are combination awesome. I mean, because it's mostly jobber matches.
Yep.
And then so they only did like a handful of matches a night, so there was a ton of like doink throwing water on people, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, lots of getting the storylines progressed. That was just kind of their new superstars, their new primetime wrestling when Monday Night Raw came out. So we are up to Mean Gene backstage with the build up for the Warrior versus Macho, and this is where I said, why no Warrior or Macho promo? We get the footage of, we get a ton of footage here. All the superstars stuff and the primetime wrestling stuff that built this match up. Flair, Perfect, the Nasty Boys, Attack, Ultimate Warrior, and Macho Man. They had a show the week before that was called the SummerSlam Spectacular. That was like a build up for this show to try to, sell some pay-per-views and get people interested in all the major storylines. And I mean, this crowd was crazy for Warrior, who runs to the ring, and he's wearing his almost flesh-colored singlet. But if you could tell, this one is different than the one that he was wearing in some of the flashbacks, which you couldn't even tell the difference between his skin and the singlet. This one is at least a little more like pink, a little more difference between your actual skin color. He got a massive response. Macho Man's response was bigger in that he kind of was getting both boos and cheers immediately. This crowd right off the bat seemed like they were pretty pro Warrior. And what I love, before we even get into this, between the two guys, we have yellow, pink, green, orange, blue, white, black, and tan on their costumes. I mean, we just have an absolute rainbow of colors, bright as possibly can be, crowd crazy from the very beginning. Jason, I forgot how good this match was. I really did. And you had mentioned Warrior, a little earlier on. I mean, maybe because people see these matches and they wanted him to be able to kind of hold this standard all the time. But in a lot of his big matches, he was really good. There weren't a lot of like bad, sloppy moves here. The pace was good. There was a story in here. I really, really like this match.
You could tell how good a Warrior match was by how much of his face paint was off by the end of the event. But no, he to me, he's a big match, ass in the seats kind of guy. And he did he ever not get a pop? I mean, even WrestleMania 4 when he comes out against Hercules, he gets a cheer, and it was a total like between rounds kind of throwaway match. And so to me, he's a total Hall of Famer, superstar, etc. The thing I noted in the opening is that Vince not only once but twice does the Ultimate Warrior. Like Vince loves saying it like that. And what cracks me up is Vince. It becomes very obvious once you know he's the owner and promoter, listening to him when he does play-by-play, because he becomes a marketer.
Yes,
like he
and
really
we never knew this. We didn't know this.
Yeah. Oh, I had no clue.
Nobody
until
did.
Years later. Yeah.
Nobody really knew until it was '97 when it started becoming like late into '96, because Diesel would say things sometimes. But
No, it's interesting to watch and listen, because he's obviously coming at it. My other favorite thing Vince does during the commentary is when he gets really worked up to the 2 count and then he calms way down. There's another pin. He's got him to 2 and 1, and he kicks out. Like he works up to the 2 where he's screaming, and then when the guy kicks out, he goes and he kicks out. And he like really, really brings it down. But no, I think it's an amazingly good match. It's obviously the undercard feature, even though it is the championship. And to me, like I said, the whole perfect Flair thing. It's a story, but I didn't think it added anything.
No.
To the story. Yeah.
I'd go so far as to say it subtracted. I mean, Macho Man and Warrior, they had amazing chemistry together. We saw it a year and a half before, and we were seeing it for the first 15, 20 minutes of this match. They were out there doing it, even though they were wearing outfits that God knows why. But
those were bright, weren't they, Danny? Holy moly!
They both had these iconic outfits at the WrestleMania 7 affair. You remember the Warrior with the airbrush of him and Savage on his, Randy in the purple and white, and now this is just like a paintball exploded on Randy. But they're out there having a heck of a match, and then the perfect Flair stuff had to get told, and that just completely killed it for me. Also, I remember back at the time, my other thought was, hey, didn't this guy give Warrior 5 flying elbows and couldn't beat Warrior then? How's he going to beat him now?
With one.
I never thought Savage had a chance.
I kind of felt the same way. I remember, especially when young, watching this, and I think the only thing that would have been better about this match was if we would have had a cleaner, better ending. But the reason why I think we didn't was because Warrior was supposed to turn heel, and he did not want to do that at this point. So the plan was going to be to get the belt onto Flair, and then from Flair, it was going to be to Warrior. Warrior and Flair were going to have a little bit more of a feud. Warrior was going to win the belt there, and Warrior ends up leaving the company in November, and the belt goes to Bret the Hitman Hart not long, which is kind of crazy when you think about where Bret was just 6 months before this. So a lot of the matches, Vince and Bobby wondering whose corner Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect are going to be in. The Warrior looks to have the pin at one point, and the ref with a really slow count after getting hit. Hebner got beat up in here too. He took a couple nasty bumps and falls outside of the ring. Macho to pile driver. Then we're seeing Flair and Perfect starting to get involved, and Flair locks in the figure 4 on Savage outside the ring. Perfect and Flair crush Savage, and so all hell starts to break loose. And then it's a DQ, and then after the match, Warrior picks up Macho Man, hands him the belt, helps him up. They celebrate, and so it's like it's a fun moment. Warrior's kind of like repaying the moment maybe that Hogan, he's trying to be the guy, and the face of the company. But Brain says, yeah, but Flair should be there. He should be the champion. Right away he says it. And Vince, this is like where you're talking about, Jason, where Vince is going absolutely crazy, just praising Warrior and Macho. But this was a great match. Like I think the praise was worth it. It just stunk that we didn't get the clean finish.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I still remember it as a really good match. There was a lot of kind of unsatisfying endings. Because you can't switch the title every pay-per-view.
No.
At least you can now, but it was interesting. I was looking at the list of Intercontinental title holders, and Wikipedia breaks it down by days. And it's so funny how back in the old days, like if you had the title, you had it for like 180 or 200 or sometimes more days. And now like there is just a litany of guys that had it for a week and they toss it around, and, and there's more titles, of course. But, you back then, you couldn't, because they didn't have to fill 10 hours a week of content. So, they had to kind of drag out these feuds and stuff. So I don't, not the most satisfying ending, but still I think should be remembered as a really good match, and they certainly had the crowd fired up.
Back when I was in grade school, this might be the same for you guys, I was able to tell you, here's the history of the WWF Championship from 1960 to 1995.
Yeah.
Now I couldn't go back
No
past
shot.
3 years.
100%. I could tell you everything, and it's funny. Things felt, like you look at like LOD, felt like they were around forever and they're barely here. Someone like Flair who was just barely here. Like you see some of these, it feels like they're around for so long a lot of times because they're in one or two of these big storylines, and they're very rarely they weren't even. It just everything felt way different.
Dusty wasn't all there.
No, Dusty was barely around. It just felt way different, and it was different because they just didn't have as much content to have to fill. It just it's hard, and we get hard on them, but and it's hard to fill all that content, but they recently they haven't done themselves a favor. So I kind of will see both sides of it.
And they had to do more content in terms of shows.
Yeah,
they just had less TV. So you could go do the same show 6 nights in a week and nobody would tell the difference.
One thing that Warrior, or in that before we get to the next match, he says Warrior gets the belt and he brings it in, and Bobby said he's going to waffle Savage's head right off his shoulders, which was great.
What does Warrior say to Savage when they're kind of face to face the beginning of the match? I feel like you can almost get what he's saying, but you can't quite. And I'm curious if either one of you guys knew.
I couldn't catch it. No, but fun. Really, I mean, the good show, like to go from being an okay show to a great show, you have to have like one really solid match, and we're really lucky because this show has 2 really good matches. This was an excellent match, and the other main event that we'll get to in a few minutes really delivers. So yeah, by the time we get to Survivor Series, the next pay-per-view, Bret the Hitman Hart is the champ, which just seems so weird. He's losing, in the main event here, losing the IC title, and he had never even really been a main eventer at this point. So we go backstage with Perfect, with Flair, with Mean Gene. They have a plan B. They say they're going after the Warrior, and then they're going to go after Savage. And 92, 93 was a pretty big year for Harvey Whippleman, who was
Dr.
Harvey Whippleman, who was he was the manager for Sid, and he introduced Sid in the main event of WrestleMania 8 in 92. And then he brings in Kamala here. And then later he has Giant Gonzalez, who he also brings in. But he basically, Dr. Harvey Whippleman, kind of kicks off a feud with The Undertaker. So it's Whippleman introduces Kamala and Kimchi, and Bobby immediately thinks that being in front of 80,000 people could scare Kamala. He says,
I used to find Kamala legitimately scary.
Me too.
I thought, and I actually kind of liked him. Like to me, he was like a great villain type.
Kamala was the problem with Kamala at this point is just he was just a little bit past his prime. But 10 years before this, he's in main events all over the country with Andre the Giant in steel cage matches in like 81, 82.
I think he did a bunch with Hogan.
He did have have a bunch with Hogan. In like the not pay-per-view, but I think he had some feuds in the mid 80s when Hogan had the belt too. So
they working a program together. I think they call it.
Yeah, it was he had some cachet. You knew the name, you knew who he was. He didn't just seem like generic next guy to face the Undertaker. He was someone to bring in. And I mean, this match is short. This is just Undertaker.
It's in the worst spot, right? I mean,
right after the big match, and it's in between in between the other big match, so it's in the death spot. But we see Taker early offense. He climbs and walks the ropes, top ropes a few times. He's outside the ring. He goes for Kimchi and Whippleman. Kamala gets the advantage shortly. Then Taker gets control. Choke slam, flying clothesline. He goes for the tombstone, and then Kimchi comes in the ring and interferes. I believe Kimchi was Steve Lombardi at this point. The Brooklyn Brawler. So Taker wins by DQ. Kamala attacks him, and after the match, Kamala goes off the top rope, body splash. And then Taker sits up. But, I mean, that's pretty athletic for Kamala, a big man like that, to go off the top rope, body slash. And then the look that Kamala gives is one of those looks that you see. He did a great job conveying that scared look. I mean, he looks scared shitless. And he kind of fast jogs away as the Undertaker kind of slowly walks after him. Jason, these guys would battle at Survivor Series in a casket match. But this was like 3 minutes. It was just to kind of keep their feud going, and you hit the nail on the head. It's just in a bad spot.
But I agree with you about the look. It's great because Paul Bearer is who tips off the Undertaker when to sit up. You see Paul Bearer smack the ring, and Undertaker sits upright when he hears that. That's when he knows to kind of make the move. But Kamala's look to me is so great, and it, like as you said, it literally started the build-up for the casket match, because we now knew that Kamala was scared to death of the Undertaker and eventually would become scared to death of caskets and everything associated with him. Danny, I want to address this to you because, Gino, no offense, but you're a thinner-built gentleman. Me and Danny are larger guys. Danny, did you do the Kamala belly slap quite often as a younger man? I did.
That and the truffle shuffle.
I had some self-respect. I didn't do that one, but no, I used to seriously. I would walk around all the time and just like hit my belly like Kamala.
Also on this match, I could be wrong, but this felt to me like it was probably the first time we got that really big time Undertaker entrance.
Great point.
Out in the in the British hearse, down Wembley, you see the casket inside, and it just felt kind of like the type of entrance we get today with the Undertaker.
This was fun. It was quick. And what's great about this show, any of the stuff that was just kind of or just there was all quick. Yeah. Like there's nothing that drags.
I think it's one of the better death spot matches in a pay-per-view.
100%. Because it's just you get the entrance, you get the pomp. There's like a couple of quote unquote WrestleMania moments here at SummerSlam, right? The Kamala look, Undertaker coming down to the ring, the sit up. It's good. It keeps their build going. This just went 3 minutes and 39 seconds, and the match before that, the Warrior Savage, they went over 26 minutes. They went 26-15, which great job by Warrior to stay. I mean, he didn't look like he was tired or blown up or anything at all throughout that match. So. Taker moves on to Survivor Series, and then we'll get to see like a new wrinkle that would be kind of part of the Undertaker's career forever, the casket match, which is a huge. Any one of his big feuds, he generally has one of those. Main event time, so we get the British Bulldog. He's with Sean Mooney. He's cutting a promo, and the thing that I thought was weird about this: why is he standing in front of that bulletin board? It's like he's standing in front of a Wembley bulletin board that's got like flyers about things that are coming up this week, which is so bizarre. It's like there's no WWF anything. And there's like, it was distracting to me because I was trying to like read the writing on it and what it was, and I couldn't figure it out. It was just stupid things that we noticed, when we're looking around. And Bulldog hopes the family will be okay. When he steps in the ring with Brett, he never met Brett. And that's when you think, I don't think Bulldog looks messed up in the match, but he kind of looks a little messed up in this promo, like knowing that now when you see him, his eyes are a little jacked up.
He looked really off in this promo, watching it in retrospect.
Yeah, but again, he doesn't like when he gets in the ring. It all looks pretty good. And then, Jason, I thought, and we'll get your thoughts on both these promos before we get into the match, or before we get into the next, I guess, segment. Brett was never a guy that, and he's my all-time favorite, and he was never a guy that I would say was the best promo. This was a damn good promo though from Brett. He's really intense. You know, he talks about. Because I think it's an easy promo for him because it's all stuff like, hey, it's real. I introduced you to my sister. You're kind of coming up the ranks. Now this is going to break the family up a little bit. Did you need to do this? This was one of my favorite Bret the Hitman Hart promos. It's just, there's nothing like special about it, but it's just intense and it's pretty pointed.
Yeah, again, I didn't realize till I got older that Bret wasn't a great promo because to me, he always just looked really cool. And when you're a kid, to me, like that's kind of enough, right? Like the sunglasses and the leather jacket and the dark hair, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so I never had a real issue with his promo. I mean, they're a little bit. He's not over the top, which, like I said, hindsight now is actually good to me because there was a period of time there where you had to scream in a promo unless you were Jake the Snake, or maybe even Honky would sometimes, but. I did have a little bit of an objection to Diana's speech where she was talking about she gets to be on the front lines of war and all. Like it seemed, I was like, that seems a little. I mean, it's a wrestling match,
little much,
yeah. But I mean, I know she's got to sell it, but and like every time they pan to her, like she just looked like she's just like, oh, David, no, David, you know, like it just
she was too like she did a good job. Like I will say, whether it was her or whether she was directed this. She was like acting like someone was like about to die. I actually thought she did a good job, like making it seem big, like a big deal. But they made it seem like too big of a deal. Just like you said, like this seemed like someone was about to pass away, kind of a thing. Versus like this is actually kind of a great moment. I mean, my brother and my husband are in the main event here. Like this is kind of cool, you know. Like so. Danny, what'd you think about we got the Bulldog promo, we got the Brett, and then we get we'll see Diana a little bit later on, but what about those two guys setting up?
No, it felt real. I mean, you get that kind of real feeling of wrestling back then when everything was a gimmick or a cartoon character. But here's a couple of guys, their family. Here's the woman that connects the two of them, and you felt it.
So we get Rowdy Roddy Piper sighting. We have the bagpipes are being played by the Balmoral Highlanders, and then Bobby says, "I've always hated hard rock." And Rowdy Roddy comes out and plays with them, and I could notice that he was for sure focused and intense on. He kind of had a little bit of a solo at the beginning too. Piper, he looked really focused and intense on playing that first part right. And Bobby says they're certainly not the Rockettes. And what a windbag this guy is. But the crowd was going crazy. They love Piper.
And Piper legit played, right? That wasn't...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But he's not Scottish. Like he literally learned to get into the character, right?
That's dedication right there.
Yeah. My Gino, I don't want to get ahead of you, but I just don't want you to be. I don't want you to be able to steal one of my favorite moments, and that's when Howard Finkel introduces Lennox Lewis. He goes, "Lennox Lewis." And it just cracks me up the way he says he emphasizes brought to the ring by Lennox Lewis. Thank you. I can actually go home now. That was all I wanted.
No, you had to. So this was just a moment to get Piper out, and this was the last time we see Piper for a few years. He doesn't show back up till '94 WrestleMania 10 when he's actually the one of the special guest referees for the main event there of Brett versus Yokozuna. Mm-hmm. So Sean Mooney's with Diana, kind of talking that little promo that Jason talked about a moment ago. But she's definitely playing this very, very seriously. She said she's not concerned with who wins. She just wants the bond with her family. And Mooney is, I will say this, like I liked Mooney. He was funny. He's goofy. He's just terrible when he's asking people questions because he's like forcing what he wants them to say, you know, and he was doing this with like Mary Tyler Moore. And like anytime he has a celebrity, he's like asking them questions that they have no idea. Like what they're not gonna know the answers to this, so he definitely just like really lays it on. And because WWF was coming to be such a big draw on Sky Sports, Bulldog's hugely popular over there. He main evented a lot of those European tours, and because of that popularity, he got this shot. So it is main event time, and we get that huge pop for the Bull. For Lennox, and then for Bulldog.
Well,
yeah.
and for Brett.
And then for Brett right after too, because they didn't really want to boo Brett until it kind of got into it. And
Until he refused to shake the hand.
Yeah, until he refused, and he started to kind of play bad guy. Bobby said he could care less who wins because it's just these two good guys that he hates, which is funny. And then I noticed this with Brett. He did it a lot, but you notice it even more when he kisses the belt and Bobby says, I wonder if he's kissing it goodbye or just kissing it. I love when Bobby kind of has – because then I always wonder –
It was poetic.
Yeah, because with some of the announcers, they don't want to know the results. They want to call it like they don't know. And then with other the announcers, obviously, they know everything that's going to go on, and they want to be able to kind of set it up a little bit more. And I always would wonder that with Brain when he would say this kind of a thing, or like when Hogan came out, but whose side is he on, for the NWO. So, I mean, this match was just – it was billed as kind of like the power of the Bulldog versus the technical skills of Brett, and Bulldog really shows his wrestling ability here. I mean, we get a fast-paced all match. Brett bulldogs the Bulldog at one point, which was great. And then he starts to embrace the heel roll a little bit. He tosses Bulldog outside the ring. He jumps over the top rope with a unique move to kind of nail Bulldog. And he works on him outside the ring. Bobby says, because he's British, it makes him a quitter. And then Brett flings Bulldog back in a back body drop. And let's see, Bulldog with a counter. There was a near fall. Brett's working on him for a while. There was one thing that I noticed too. Did you guys hear the whistle in the crowd that kept going on right here, like over and over? There's this loud whistle that was starting to just annoy the hell out of me, and it kept going off repeatedly.
The worst one ever is the '88 Rumble with that lady with the megaphone in the first match. She's the worst in the history of the WWF. Worst fan ever.
Terrible.
So worse than the Bulldog's going to win, whether he wants to or not, kid.
Yeah, that guy's going to live in infamy no matter what. So we see Diana. They're showing her a whole lot. Brett's sister and Bulldog's wife. They're back and forth there. I mean, we get Brett hits a German suplex and he just misses the pin. And then at this point, Brain's kind of excited because this match is really good. Brain even goes, "Are you kidding me?" Like he's starting to get really into it now. And he says, "Only one man I know who can get up from all these moves, and that's Ric Flair. Is there anything they haven't done?" Yeah. So he's impressed at this point. Suplex from the top rope, superplex, near fall. Brett locks in the sharpshooter. He looks like he's about to win. And Brain says he's about to give it up and have some tea. And he's good. Brain's starting to really get into it now. This was one of his better matches. I think it took him and Vince kind of a little while to get comfortable together. It wasn't his smooth with Gorilla right off the bat. But I mean, this is really good. And the finish was really unique. Bulldog ends up, out wrestling the wrestler here, which is great. And then you think Brett's going to turn heel after the match. We get the big celebration. I mean, Jason, this is good. I mean, this is a hell of a good match on a hell of a good show. This one ends up going 25 minutes. We have two matches. The two main event matches both go over 25 minutes. They didn't feel dragging long at all. Kind of like the opposite of sort of what you said with the Shawn Michaels match or Martel match. When you personally don't like a match that much, it feels like it goes on forever. These two felt like they were 10-minute matches that were 25. They were great.
Well, and the theme of the show to me is the crowd. Like the audience in this particular one, I mean, they never let down, and they're living and dying on every pinfall, and I really think that makes a difference just for the overall feel of it. But I mean, everybody's obviously so rooting for Bulldog. They get that big payoff, and like you said, I thought the finish was very, very cool in the sense that I felt like it wasn't a move we saw all that often, and the way Bulldog hooks it looks impossible to kick out of. To me, like there's no chance anybody can get out because he's literally sitting on you with those massive guns, like holding on to it just to me it looked like a good way for Brett to lose because it just looked like the guy made just a great move and you got a hats off to him. And can I give you one of my favorite Brain lines that we didn't mention was I don't know why he lets Whoopi Goldberg do his hair.
He did. Yeah.
And I mentioned it earlier, but kind of a methodical start to this one, right? Like a number of kind of chokes and hand locks. There's a couple times where he, Bulldog's got him in like an arm bar. Brett slams him, but he still holds on to it, kind of thing. And I mean, really just feeling each other out, but like I said, because of that crowd, it still feels important. It doesn't feel like it's a lull in the match.
DK, where are you at on this one?
No, this was just a great match, start to finish, and more amazing knowing what we know now about the condition the Bulldog was in that night, and yes, so memorable, so great seeing the UK crowd get their moment with Bulldog. One thing that I kind of parallel this to a bit is Brett versus Roddy Piper a couple of months at WrestleMania 8. You kind of also had, they made, obviously this is the more personal relationship here, but they went with that personal route with the Piper match at Mania 8 where Bret Hart won the Intercontinental title, and I just kind of view those two matches just in my own head as kind of like a little series of personal matches for Bret in '92, and I think this was the better of the two.
This was fun, man. I mean, this was a good, really good way to end this show, and you see it with Hogan in the Warrior match. We see it with Bret in this match. We see it, as you mentioned, with Piper. Like, Piper's best match might have been in losing to Bret Hart. And Bret says this is his favorite match of all time. And I think probably because Bret knows some things that we don't know about how much he had to do to really carry Bulldog to get through this match. But it doesn't seem like that. It doesn't. Like the Bulldog.
Well, and I'm sure it's special to him. I mean, it's his brother-in-law who's gone.
Yeah, and it seems like these two guys that are on the top of their game, and it's a bummer. Like if you watch this match, you would have never thought that British Bulldog wasn't going to be a WWF champion one day.
Yeah.
Like you watch this and you go, oh, definitely he's going to be in that grouping of guys that's always there, and he's gone by Survivor Series.
Yeah, he didn't have the long title run that was kind of status quo back then either, right? He was only for 2 months, I think. Yeah,
2 months. He is on that list with a bunch of the guys that ends up testing positive for the HGH and all that stuff. I think with Warrior too, and I think the initial reports were 49% of the WWF tested positive when they did the first round.
Michaels had to give up his IC title once for steroids, right?
Yeah, and so it was guys you didn't even think of. There was one line in right before the match when Vince was promoting Lennox Lewis versus Razor Roddick, and Bobby says he's fighting Razor Ramon. He says it's not even like it's like if you read the stuff, it doesn't come off funny, but it's just the way that Bobby delivers it in the moment and like how quick he is with everything and how sharp he is that, I mean, this was a good, you're not going to find, Danny, you won't find many WWF shows in history that have two matches of this quality on them.
Danny.
Yeah, no, sorry. I mean, to this memorable, no, I think work rate rise nowadays.
Yeah, maybe
you get
a little.
Guys that are going. You get a lot of shows that are going to go out there, and you'll see 3, 4, 4.5 star matches, but they're not the kind of matches that you're going to remember necessarily a year later, let alone 28 years later.
Okay, so I'm going to give Jason a chance to give his closing thoughts. Danny, I'm going to put you on the spot and give you a little bit of homework right now because Jason and I have picked. I want you to pick the next show that we watch. So I'm going to give you a few minutes. Think about it. I'll let you know what we've watched so far. So we did the SummerSlam 92. So far I've recapped WrestleManias 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14.
Oh, we're doing Mania 5 next. Easy.
Perfect. There we go. We don't even have to think about it again. So you already got yours out of the way. So let's get some closing thoughts from Jason and then from Danny.
Again, I've said it 5 times, but to me, the atmosphere of this event is what makes it really, really special. The location,
the lighting too, because it's like
everything about
dark.
It's evening time. It's the summer. It's a perfect night out. Like there's so many things aesthetically pleasing about it. Like I mean, even stuff down to the long aisleway walk, all that kind of stuff to me just makes an enjoyable show. And there's some important matches, there's some not important matches, but to me, the aesthetic and the crowd and everything is what really makes this one stick out. Like there are very few SummerSlams where you can say, "Oh, SummerSlam '97," and I'm like, but I know SummerSlam '92.
It's like you said about the tournament. It's like there's certain shows you just say, or like when, there's like, you can instantly know which one we're talking about. And this is one of them.
Yep.
So for me, it's just a kind of a weird show in a lot of ways. It's as you mentioned earlier, it's the first of the post Hogan era, even though Hogan would still be around a little longer after this. In a era where it was always baby face versus heel, you had a heel versus heel matchup, and then two big baby face versus baby face matchups, and that was something you never saw back then, let alone 3 matches like that on one card. So I don't know what their thought process was behind it. This show taped 2 days earlier or a day earlier and shown on pay-per-view after the fact.
Could you imagine in this day and age?
In this day and age, it took them 28 years, but we had a taped WrestleMania this year, so it took them that long. So I don't know if there's been any show in between them that's had that. So a little bit of trivia, but this a great show, all-time crowd, but a lot of unique features to it.
Yeah, I'm glad. This was a great call, Jason. I'm glad. And the ones that you've picked so far, Jason, have been good in that. Like this, I think of the 3 that we've talked about, this was the best of the shows as far as like the quality of the shows. But the ones that I like that you pick out are definitely memorable, and you can see with what you say about the crowd and the ambiance and the experience, and that's kind of what we got with WrestleMania 4, with WrestleMania 9, and now with SummerSlam 92. So homework for the both of you fellas. We'll link back up in the next week or two. I'll try to figure out a good time and let's shoot for early one of the next couple weeks. WrestleMania 5. Jason Beem, give us the information. Let us know about the podcast, where we can find you online.
Yeah, just Jason Beem Horse Racing Podcast, Twin Spires, wherever you get your podcast. I will say, Gino, we can't do Monday the 18th. It's my birthday. I'm not doing a wrestling podcast on my 40th birthday.
Happy early birthday, and a big one too coming up.
Oh man, Gino, I'm washing out. It's
milestone.
It's traumatic, man. Like the thing I've been focusing on the most is whenever they show the people who get sick with COVID, they break it down by 30 to 39, 40 to 40. The 40 to 49 group is always way higher,
way worse.
And I still got 2 weeks of not being in that, so I'm
You're
just
like, don't put me in there, please. Don't put me in there. No,
the worst. Getting old's the worst. You guys are young pups.
I don't know what you're talking about, Jason.
Danny, I thought you were like 32.
I got a few years on you, buddy.
Oh, never mind. Okay.
Derby Danny, where can we find you if we want to get good stuff about cats and silly horse racing stuff here and there?
Yeah, no, follow me on Twitter at Derby Danny K. You will know everything that's going on with my cats at all times, and depending on how brave I'm feeling, you might also get some great racing content.
Nice. Well, Danny, one of my favorite things that we ever did at TVG that I know you loved was that Cat Tucky Derby that we did, where I had to call that one, so that was a ton of fun. Fellas,
you killed it with that also.
I was going to say that's some of my best work. That really was some of my best work. I'm very proud.
We were talking about you. Alan Dinkinson's in my nightly Zoom chat.
Nice.
And we have a bunch of better types from Vegas and stuff. And they were talking. He was talking about how you did a great job as his PNG or PGW or whatever it was, his ring announcer.
Yeah,
and he was
quintessential.
He said you did. He goes, Gino did it. He took it very serious. He did a great job.
I wore my suit all the time. I like everything. I went and talked to all the wrestlers before and made sure, how do they want me to introduce them? What do you want me to say about you? Is there anything I can do? And then one of the times, Joey Ryan, who you probably know who he is now. He's the guy that does the weird penis plex thing. He's got the guy that's like his gimmick is like a 70s porn star kind of dude with the baby oil. He's got the creepy mustache and all that stuff. And he was kind of like the booker of the show too. Like he would, and so I'm sitting there in the back as we're getting ready and everyone's getting ready, and I'm sitting down next to him and he starts saying, okay, hey, let me lay out the card for you just so you know, okay, here's the match, blah, 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 and so-and-so's going over. And my eyes are like opening up. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like behind the door. I'm like, no, who's going to win all the matches now? Cause I gotta introduce them and I gotta know what the results are. And then he says, hey, do you mind if I can I want to go like super heel on this show. So can I like mess around with you a little bit? I was like, you can do anything you want to me. I've been waiting for this for my whole life. So he later on and so kind of pulls my glasses off my head and kind of pushes me into the corner and puts my glasses on and kind of makes fun of my voice and stuff. I was like, yes, I'm a part of the show. I was so excited. It was like a dream come true. So I think I did a couple shows for Dink in Vegas, and then they did a bunch of them right in Monrovia, like 5 minutes away from Santa Anita Racetrack, which was, I mean, Kevin Owens, saw Sami Zayn, Shayna Baszler was in a bunch of them, Ruby Riott, who's now there, Cassius Ono, Johnny Gargano. There were just a ton of wrestlers who, it's kind of like you go to watch the minor league games, and then you see them come up and you feel like, man, I was a part of that. So it's cool, man. Tell Dink I said hello when you talk to him.
Will do, yeah.
Jason Beem, Danny K, homework on the table for us. Next, WrestleMania 5. We'll link all up together and see when's a good time. Thanks again, fellas. I appreciate you taking some of your time out. And you know what? The numbers are doing really good on these shows. I think people, just like us, they don't have a whole lot to do, and people love the nostalgia of going back and watching some of these old wrestling, man. It was really popular at the time, and it's always fun talking wrestling with your buddies. So thanks, Jason. Thanks, Danny.
Thanks, guys.
Good doing it.
Okay, don't go anywhere. We're going to take a quick break. We'll hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back on That's What G Said. A big thank you to Danny and to Jason for hanging out and talking some wrestling with me. You can see we have a good time. And right now there's not a lot of live sports going on, so it's always fun to go back in time and relive the moments when you were a kid and everything seemed that much more important, right, in the world of wrestling. So thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review anywhere you get your podcast. Help to share the show around if you can. We'll be back in just a couple days with another episode that'll focus in on weekend racing. We'll talk a little bit about billions and any other big or important news in the world of sports and pop culture. Thanks, folks. Talk soon. Here's Joey.